Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto Rinnegan missing Nin. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Lightimus and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. The world was torn asunder. A shinobi. This simple 7-letter word describes a plethora of individuals. For some it was the title of a warrior, for others it was the mark of an assassin. The word is even able to describe healers whose abilities can save those who are more dead than alive. Even for all the wonders that a shinobi can perform, most thought of them as nothing more than tools. A simple means to an end. They are, however, so much more. Looking past all the abilities and skills they honed for their entire lives, they were individuals like any other. Each held their own hopes, dreams, and aspirations. And just how the complexity of an individual is hard to define, so is an accurate definition of the word shinobi. If one was asked to give a definition of the word, many would simply say it is one who endures. Kakashi Haddock endured more than most had for their entire lives, and he only recently began his 30s. A father renowned as a genius was drove to depression by those he saved. A man so great that none thought he could be killed in battle ended up dying by taking his own life. A teammate, a comrade who was still young enough to be considered a child, sacrificed himself to save Rin and Kakashi. Rin, the only woman he ever loved, died by his own hand in order to save their village from the demon sealed within her. A teacher who treated him as family was killed by the same teammate that was thought to have died all those years ago. Watching the son of his teacher bear the burden of a monster forced on his shoulders as a newly born, only to be scorned and feared by those he was protected. The pain and suffering that this man had endured is what shaped him into the man, the shinobi that he was today. Even with all the experience Kakashi had, he was at a loss of what to do as he stood across from Obito in the world, or more accurately put, alternate dimension that they were in. As Kakashi looked at the scarred man who was once the teammate who sacrificed himself for him, the absent-minded gesture of running his hand over the scar that caused him to gain the right eye of Obito's wasn't missed. Obito stared at his right eye that he gave to Kakashi for a few more seconds before his posture relaxed and audibly signed. "I'll need you to return that gift I gave you all those years ago, Kakashi." Even as Obito visibly relaxed, it only caused Kakashi to tense more. The distorted man before him was not Obito, but a warped body and mind that was not to be trusted. A man who started the 4th Shinobi War only to say it to be done in the name of peace, caused anger to brew within the white hair nin. Perhaps it was the anger and emotion that Kakashi hadn't felt in years, or maybe the desire to understand such broken logic that prompted Kakashi to question his former teammate. "Why are you doing this, Obito? If you truly do desire peace, then why are you doing all of this? Because of you there have been tens of thousands of deaths. You single-handedly in a sense started the 4th Great Shinobi War." Taking a pause to see if Obito reacted to any of his words, was met with the same black expression Obito donned before his tirade. The disinterest displayed only brought another spike of anger from Kakashi. "All of this bloodshed and all of this hatred. How can you possibly claim peace to be your goal?" Kakashi asked, his voice beginning to lace with mixed emotions. Obito sighed again, in a manner very reminiscent of a parent forced to explain logical arguments to a headstrong child. "Kakashi, you understand nothing. There will never be peace. People will never be able to understand one another, that is why I will force peace onto them with an infinite Tsukiyomi," was the reply Kakashi received in a voice devoid of any emotions. Obito's actions were not like those of a fanatic who sought recognition for his choices, but an individual so distorted that they truly believed their reasonings of logic was the only correct one. Such a convoluted process is what prompted Kakashi to roar, "Then explain to me how this war is a justifiable action for your ideal of peace. You claim nothing more than an illusion of peace for the price of 1,000 lives." Kakashi's argument prompted Obito to think of the points made against him, but the mind of a distorted individual cannot simply be swayed with mere words or bouts of irrefutable logic. "It's really simple, Kakashi. By using the infinite Tsukiyomi with the power of the Juubi, I can cast the Genjutsu on the whole world. But the fruition of my plan, the revival of those who died, will be a simple endeavor in this grand scheme." Leveling a patronizing look at Kakashi, he continued. "Everyone will be happy and have everything they ever wanted. We can even bring Rin back, Kakashi." Obito affirmed with a smile reminiscing of events long ago. "I can't save him," Kakashi thought. A quick self-assessment of his combat potential caused him to frown. He was almost out of chakra, with only enough left for one more high-level jutsu. Killing Obito was almost next to impossible, since anything short of an instant death would allow him to teleport back to the Juubi and heal any damage done. As Kakashi began to formulate scenarios to bring the seemingly unattainable victory to light, Obito changed his causal stance into one with the intent to attack. Obito decided to give one last verbatim before he attacked. "Sorry, Kakashi, but I need my eye back. You having access to my Sharingan has proved itself more of a danger than I anticipated. Please give it back before I take it back by force." But that statement an idea burst into Kakashi's head, I don't have to kill Obito if I just destroy our Sharingans, then we'll be stuck here forever. You shouldn't be concerning yourself over the Sharingan. If I have to kill you, so be it Obito. He began to charge the last bit of his chakra into a final Rakiri. It seems like I've never been able to keep any of my promises, but Naruto has kept every single one he has made, so I'll put my faith in him like everyone else. Idle banter aside, as long as Kakashi planned a lethal attack while simultaneously setting himself up for a second attack to Obito's eye, the possibility that Obito would predict the second strike with his Sharingan was there. A very real risk with a likelihood of failure, but one he was willing to take. Kakashi's admission made Obito frown. You truly are scum, Kakashi. First you kill Rin, and now you try to take my life too. Do you still place missions above friends, Kakashi? Killing you would truly be a gift to the shinobi world. Kakashi flinched at Obito's statement. You can't stop me, Kakashi, you are almost out of chakra. I can sense the last of your chakra being funneled into that Justu. No matter what you do, I'll be able to read the attack with my Sharingan. Obito's words didn't deter Kakashi in the slightest, so he signed resolutely. I don't even have to dodge this attack. Once I kill Kakashi, I can teleport back to Madara and seal the Jubi in myself. When that happens, the condition of my body will be irrelevant. Taking one more look at each other, both their faces twisted into something akin to remorse, they begin to move. A mere blur to all but the highly trained eye, they flew towards each other. Not a second later, the sickening wet crunch of flesh being torn was the only sound heard in the desolate dimension they dwelled in. Both had their arms pushed through the other in a gruesome display of the strength that shinobi had at their beck and call. A few seconds of registering the pain was enough for the two seasoned shinobi to identify the extent of their wounds. A gaping hole where his heart should be was the blow Kakashi dealt to Obito, who in turn received a hole of similar size in his right lung. Tears began to freely fall from the sister set of Sharingans. Even with one being a seasoned shinobi and the other a man distorted to his very core, the act of killing the person who you considered your best friend was enough to draw tears from these two. Using his left hand in a gesture to wipe the tear away, Kakashi moved his hand with his thumb resting right below Obito's eye while his fingers cupped his head. The simple mouthing of "I'm sorry" was the last thing Obito saw with his left eye. With the speed Kakashi was known for forming hand seals, he destroyed the pair of Sharingans with a minuscule amount of lighting chakra he ran into his thumb. The second Obito registered the attack with the acute sharp pain from having his eye destroyed, he used his left hand to begin crushing Kakashi's throat while ripping his right arm out of the dying shinobi. Damn it, Kakashi. The act of being strangled seemed pointless to Kakashi since his body would no longer be able to supply the necessary oxygen to survive with one lung. That was considering he died of asphyxia before blood loss. As blood vessels began to rupture in his neck from the force of Obito's grip, blood began to pool out of Kakashi's mouth. Despite dying, Kakashi couldn't help but smile. Obito reflexively stopped when Kakashi tried to speak in what was most likely his last words. Speaking with a throat that was more along the lines of crushed while sporting a hole in one of his lung caused the words spoken to adopt a blood-curdling chill as they came out in vibrating rasps. Sorry Obito, looks like you are going to be stuck here with me, Kakashi wheezed out in a voice too alien from normal to be properly described. Kakashi's last words prompted Obito to begin crushing his throat with more vigor. Kakashi knew Naruto would find a way break any obstacle in his way, so he smiled one last time while he looked at Obito with his only functional eye. All of his memories of his once dear friend began to flicker through his mind. The copycat nin was so close to death that he didn't notice how the world froze as a darkness consumed everything in its path. But sitting down, Naruto was exhausted. Faced with crippling exhaustion, he was forced to wait as Sakura healed his heavily damaged body. The green chakra felt like pure ecstasy throughout his nervous system as it repaired his damaged muscles and organs. As his body was being treated, he focused his thoughts on how he would deal with Madara and a partially revived Jubi. Not really sure how he would stop the two, he entered his mindscape to counsel with his newly formed friend, Kurama. The first thing he realized was that his mindscape no longer resembled a sewer with murky water swirling at his feet. With the Biju having free reign to change the scenery of his mind, it looked like he chose a place a regular fox would most likely call home. Instead of Kurama residing in the recently opened cage that acted as a seal, he sat in the middle of a meadow with a forest surrounding the two. Naruto walked up to Kurama and after a few seconds of a lack of acknowledgement he spoke up by saying, "Yo. What's up, kid?" Kurama asked in a strained tone while he sat in a meditative position which focused on restoring his recently exhausted chakra supply. "Any clue how we can beat those two, Dadabeo?" Naruto asked calmly as his hands rested in his pockets. Kurama didn't even consider the question for a second before he responded with, "Yes, it's quite simple, really. We rip the two to shreds until there is nothing left of them," Kurama answered with a cheeky grin. "I don't know if we can do that, buddy, the Jubi is the size of a mountain after all." Naruto reasoned as he attempted to visualize such an outcome. Kurama had to suppress groan. Leave it to that idiot to try and think logically now of all times. He hoped that the kid could behind his usual pattern of action which consisted of kicking ass first and thinking later. Listen kid, it doesn't matter if you think we can or can't stop them, because we will stop them. You have never let me down before and I don't expect you to start now. Now leave me to rest and gather my chakra, I suggest you do the same. With that, Naruto left his mindscape in order to check his current chakra levels and look for vulnerable areas on the Jubi's body. When he opened his eyes, his breath hitched because in the scope of his vision everything before him was frozen. Ninjas in the air seemed to be stuck as their bodies forgot the meaning of gravity. The entirety of the world was brought to a standstill as if frozen in time as the laws of physics seemed to be broken. Not only was the sight off-putting, so were the sounds since not a single one could be heard. The situation being more than a little eerie caused a chill to run the course of his spine. What stood out the most was that the Jubi was no longer wildly thrashing about, but instead it stood completely still. The most powerful known force in the world was being frozen in place by an unknown force. Sakura, do you see this? Naruto questioned. After a few seconds without a reply and noticeable absence of her healing ninjutsu, he swiveled around and saw Sakura frozen with her face stuck in a mask of concentration. Yo, Sakura, what are you doing? Asked Naruto. No response. Hey Sakura, are you even listening to me? No response. He snapped his fingers in front of her face, to which she still did not react at all. Naruto could do nothing but gape. The idea that he was under some sort of genjutsu caused his heart to begin to hammer in his chest as thoughts of panic began to race around. He tried to focus chakra out of his body in an attempt to break the genjutsu he thought he was under, but he wasn't able to push a single drop of chakra outside his body. The momentary panic began to shift to fits of hyperventilation, but then something began to happen. The world began blackening and from all sides he could see the darkness was racing towards him. Doing a quick 360-degree scan showed the abyss all racing towards one spot. That spot was right where he was standing. In a matter of seconds the void would reach him. Frozen by fear he felt the dark abyss reach him before he could react and the second it did, he could feel himself falling. Unsure of what to do, or for that matter what was happening, he began to focus all of his energy to sensing the world around him. Again, no matter how hard he pushed, the chakra would not push through the threshold of his body. The large quantities of energy now freely floating in his body forced him to stop circulating chakra in his body for fear of harming himself. Fear. An emotion that he hadn't felt for years began tearing into his heart. Not sure what to do as he suffered from the fear of the crushing paralysis he was currently facing. Shaking his head, he knew he wasn't out of options yet. His sensing abilities drastically improved ever since he learned Sage Mode, so he began to prod around with that sixth sense that only those who knew how to manipulate chakra could feel. The sensing was just as disheartening since he could not feel anything, not a single form of life or a structure for that matter anywhere around him. He was sure he pushed his senses as far as a mile in the distance, surely he would have felt something, a stone, grass, hell even a grain of sand would make him happy. With this unsettling information Naruto began to panic thinking that the infinite Tsukiyomi was just preformed. However, he pushed that thought out because Madara wouldn't have been able to cast it without absorbing the Jubi's chakra to power the technique, which he knew didn't happen because he was watching and sensing him the entire time Sakura was healing him before the abrupt cutoff he was currently facing. Not knowing what to do, Naruto relaxed as he began to free fall through the abyss. After a minute or so he began feeling a tickling sensation at the back of his head. He moved his hands to check his head but felt nothing but his blonde locks and his skull completely undamaged. Even though Naruto knew nothing was on the back of his head, the tickling sensation began to increase until he began hearing an audible ringing sound in his head. As seconds passed by, the ringing grew louder and louder, making him wonder if cracking his own skull for stop the damn noise. Thinking the worst, he entered his mindscape and saw Kurama deep in thought with his eyes closed. Kurama. What's the fuck is going on? No wait, never mind that, why the hell does it feel like my head is going to explode? Kurama's eyes slowly began to open and when he did he looked at Naruto and frowned. There is something I need to show you, Kurama said somberly. Naruto frowned since Kurama always had a certain amount of emotion to his tone. It was usually filled with hatred and not until recently, when the two had bonded, had he ever heard the fox in a different tone, one more akin to pride. With this, Naruto began to fear the absolute worst. He never expected Kurama to talk in such a way that was so resigned, it just didn't seem possible for him. He was the Kyuubi, the most powerful of the tailed demons. What's up, Kurama, do you know what's going on? No, but you have to see this, kid. This is the first memory you have ever had and until a second ago I did not exist. How a memory that doesn't exist coming to existence is beyond me. But that said, Kurama extended his fist to the blonde. Naruto, more than confused and uncertain, waited a little before a sign as his shoulders began to sag. Bringing his fist up he lightly tapped his to the giant foxes, and the second he did, an explosion of sights, sounds, and smells rushed through his body. Opening his eyes only for them to be extremely blurry caused him to try and squint, which made him realize he was no able to perform the biological action for some reason. Sounds caught his attention, but he was having trouble distinguishing what they were. They came in more of muffled whispers than anything else. Fuhoka Ito, get away from the Jin, other Acethyls Ilfil, and 1 min was all he was able to make out. A few more things were said, but Naruto wasn't able to recognize any of it. As seconds began to tick by, Naruto's vision began to improve along with his hearing. Since he couldn't control any part of his body, as he realized it was a memory he was currently reliving. Over the sound of himself crying he heard a voice he knew he heard before but couldn't place who or where he heard it from. "Wait. Calm down," said the foreign yet, at the same time, familiar voice. At the sound of the voice, his eye through the memory focused, and what he saw as he looked up was none other than Obito, wearing his orange mask that had a swirling pattern to a hole where his left eye should be. At that second Naruto realized that the memory he was seeing, and everything that was happening down to every detail, was as Minato explained to him when the seal was broken years ago from the night when the Kyuubi attacked Konoha. Something happened though that Minato didn't say. He saw Obito use his Mangekyou Sharingan before the battle between the two began. Naruto was sucked in with Obito, but instead of entering a different dimension, he was right where they were before Obito used his Sharingan. Everything after that played into perfect detail on account of what Minato told him. After the memory ended, Naruto looked up to Kurama, who held a neutral face. Naruto searched Kurama's face for answers, but the fox's mask didn't betray a thought, so he stated, "Everything that happened went exactly as the fourth told us, but why do you think he didn't include the part when Obito used a Mangekyou Sharingan before the two began fighting?" "I don't know, kid, but I have a few guesses as to why. I would tell you now, but we don't have time for it. Something is happening, head back to your body now." When Naruto regained his senses, he opened his eyes to see a light in front of him, rapidly approaching. The second he hit the light, his body was flooded by a variety of senses before he abruptly blacked out. Chapter 2, Unexpected Turn of Events. Naruto found himself walking through a forest. In the forest, every tree was carved with circular holes in them to act as shelves. On each shelf were scrolls of various shapes and sizes. Curiosity getting the better of him, Naruto retrieved a scroll at random from one of the trees. Unrolling the scroll, he skimmed through the various texts that contained a variety of information. The titles of sections had headings such as 5th birthday, academy graduation, 1st department. Becoming interested in the titles, Naruto read the information below a few of the headings. About halfway through the first half, he realized that the information in the scrolls was the memories he had throughout his life. After a short reminiscing of the past, Naruto put the scroll back into position before continuing on his way. Walking further into the forest, he saw a tree slightly larger than the rest, with numerous scrolls filling the racks with plenty of extra room to fill with even more scrolls. With his interest almost peaked, he pulled the scroll at the bottom out and began reading the information. Chakra molding, substitution jutsu, hedge jutsu, sexy jutsu. After reading about the first jutsu that he had perfected, he burst out laughing. He couldn't believe how far he had come along as a shinobi. From the start he was dead last at the ninja academy in Konoha, and now he was one of the strongest shinobi of his time. He now knew several S-class jutsus, along with being able to control not only natural chakra, but also the Kyuubis. Naruto found the irony almost too humorous as he began bursting out in a fit laughter. As his laughter died down, he started to form a lump in his throat. He began recalling the recent events that led to his situation of being stuck in his mindscape. He was worried and depressed with the uncertainty of what just happened. He began thinking that he was all alone again, just like when he was younger when the entire village despised him. Naruto began to choke up a bit and felt his eyes starting to tear up. Right when Naruto was about to break down and cry from the injustice of his life, a familiar voice roared which began shaking the foundation of his mindscape. "Eat. I know you're out there, so hurry out and come to me. I have been waiting for hours, you brat." At that second Naruto realized that he would never be alone again. If he woke up and was still in the black void, Kurama would be there. Even if his body never regained consciousness, he knew that he would have Kurama. Naruto found it slightly amusing that his newfound friend was considered a demon in everyone else's eyes, and that even though the being once held more rage than anything else, he befriended him. Even more so, Naruto had every right to hate the Kyuubi more than anything else, seeing as how he killed both of his parents, condemning him to a lonely life of abuse for the first few years of his life. Naruto chuckled when he realized that he was finding solace from the entity that caused him the lonely and broken life of his childhood. Dismissing the thoughts that started to flood his head, he headed off in the direction that he heard Kyuubi's voice. After a slight jog, Naruto came into the meadow at the center of his mindscape. There Kurama stood just tapping a paw against himself with irritation evident in his eyes. "There you are, brat. What took you so long? I have been waiting here for hours," Kurama said with a scowl on his face. "Yay fuzzball, I'm here." I didn't take you for the kind of demon to whine like a child when you have to wait, Naruto said, smirking while he looked away with one eye open to see the fox's reaction. Kurama's face contorted and he appeared like he was about to split Naruto in two. He tensed his body and let out a menacing growl. Right when he was ready to attack the boy, his body relaxed and grinned from ear to ear. Kurama realized that Naruto was just joking with him, similar to how best friends joke with each other all the time. Kurama felt a warm sensation in his chest and wondered if this was what it was like to have a friend. Never once in his existence did he consider anyone but the sage of six paths a friend. Cheeky brat, you're lucky I am in a forgiving mood today, otherwise I would have ripped you to shreds. Naruto, seeing Kurama's reaction and understanding every part of it, mimicked Kurama's huge grin. He knew that even if he was stuck in his mindscape or the black void for the rest of his life, it wouldn't be that bad at all. Well, you were off doing who knows what, kid, I got some good news to tell you. But, let me tell you everything before you say anything. I have a lot to say and I will not tolerate any interruptions. Got it? Naruto quickly nodded and dropped his smile to put on a serious face. First off, let's begin with the good news. When you hit that light at the end of the void, you re-entered the world. The blackout was nothing more than you hitting the ground at blinding speeds. Luckily I was able to put my cloak on you before you hit the ground, so instead of dying you only have a few broken bones and gashes. I have already started healing those wounds for you. Thanks Kurama, you're the best Adebayo. Naruto abruptly said. I told you not to interrupt me, you brat. Besides, if you die I die too, that's the only reason I did what I did. The giant fox said with anxiety filling his voice. Right, sorry Kurama, please continue, I didn't mean to interrupt, Naruto said with his signature grin. The fox huffed and then sighed, compassing himself to continue. Naruto had no trouble interacting with him at all, but the gestures felt so foreign to him from not using them in decades. He coughed into his paw and continued to say, anyway kid, onto the bad news. You are going to be out for about 3 days, but don't worry, I'll have you all healed up and back to normal by then. The problem isn't the time it's going to take to recover, it is who found you in that crater you made leaving the black abyss. It's a woman who seems honest and sincere, she wrapped you up in bandages and has you in the back of her wagon in a traveling caravan of merchants. The merchants you are traveling with are either ignorant or just idiotic. None of the merchants can mold a single amount of chakra and they are moving across the battlefields of the Fourth War with not a care in the world. If a pack of white Zetsus attack, I will have to accelerate the healing process possible, leaving permanent damage on your body. With all that said, it looks like we are going to pass the next 3 days here in your mind. Alright, that's all I got to tell you kid, what do you think? Naruto went deep into his thoughts as he started to hum while he closed his eyes. I guess we can just get to know each other while we wait during the 3 days then. 3 days later, Naruto began to open his eyes only to snap them shut right away. It had been about 3 days since he had last been conscious and he had the misfortune to wake up during the day. After getting over the searing pain from the sun frying his retina, he slowly opened his eyes to see a blue sky with clouds here and there from the window. Being instinctual, he tried to stretch his arms and legs but couldn't move his body when his tried. Boy fox, what gives, I thought you said I would be healed by now. Look down, you idiot. Naruto looked down to see nearly his entire body in a cast which was covered with bandages. Oh, my bad Kurama. After Kurama snorted and Naruto rolled his eyes, he began to feed chakra to his muscles to break the cast. After he fed a minuscule amount of chakra to his body, Naruto flexed all of his muscles, which created a loud cracking sound when the cast broke in numerous places. He then proceeded to stretch and yawn. He noticed his body was pretty stiff, but that wasn't anything surprising seeing as how he was immobile for 3 days. As Naruto began to relax and massage himself, he looked around to see he was in a cart. The interior wasn't fancy, but had a roof and a small cot he was resting on. There were windows on both sides of the cart and numerous trading goods he assumed the merchants would trade and sell. Bang. Ah. What the hell? Naruto yelled when the door to the carriage burst open. There stood a girl who looked to be around his age, somewhere between 17 and 19. The first thing he thought was how pretty she was. The girl had green eyes and red hair. She was in great health with a curvy body. After a few minutes though, she still didn't say anything, she just stared at him with her mouth wide open and her eyes growing so big that they might just pop out of her head. Yo. What's up? No response. Thanks for was as far as Naruto got before the girl started screaming. She quickly but gingerly placed her arms on Naruto's chest and pushed him back in an attempt to make him lay back down. I'm sure you are wondering where you are and what's happening, but you can't move. Your body is broken and mangled, it's a miracle you haven't died yet, but if you keep moving you will kill yourself. The girl was frantically trying to help him, tears beginning to form at her eyes. Naruto, not sure what to do, did the only thing he wanted to do. He burst out laughing. Not the traditional laughter too, but the full-blown maniacal laughter that one gets from time to time. The girl just froze, not sure what to do. Is he crazy? Does he want to kill himself? Should I really have saved him? Maybe he was almost dead for a reason, maybe he did horrible things. Thoughts and scenarios began racing through her head. Naruto quickly caught on to her change in expression and frowned. Hey, don't be so down, look I'm fine Naruto, then raised his arm up so the girl could inspect it, see I'm fine, not a scratch on my body. I'm all healed up. The girl froze and looked him over once more. She could not see a single cut, bruise, or drop of blood on the boy. She thought it was strange how he stopped bleeding within hours after she bandaged and casted him, but recovering from the injuries he had was unbelievable and in 3 days was bordering on insanity. She couldn't believe her eyes, she just gaped at the blonde boy. Sorry if I scared you there. I'm a really quick healer you see. The name is Naruto Uzumaki. Thanks for taking care of me while I was out, but if you wouldn't mind could I ask you some questions? Naruto said with an honest and caring smile. The girl just stared for a few more seconds and then she realized she was staring. My name is Eclair and taking care of you was no trouble at all, she said as she gave him a warm smile. She instantly pushed all of the dark thoughts out of her head, seeing and hearing the sincerity of the boy before her. Betting over the fact that Naruto had an unnatural ability to heal, she nodded to him and said, feel free to ask me whatever you want. Naruto smiled and said, okay, first question where are we? You are in my wagon which is part of the traveling merchants of Fire Country. I am the group's doctor as well as a general goods trader. Okay, second question, why are you freely roaming around Fire Country during the 4th Shinobi War? Naruto asked with a little edge to his voice. The 4th Shinobi War? There has never been a 4th war. The last great Shinobi War was the 3rd. Do you mean one of the wars solely between 2 of the nations? Eclair replied with a quizzical look. What are you talking about Eclair? You know, the 4th Shinobi War. It started within the last month, surely you have heard of it. This whole continent is a battleground, how are you traveling in the middle of a war zone? That's quite dangerous you know, said Naruto in a serious manner. Instead of replying, Eclair moved her hands and started feeling Naruto's head. At first Naruto was just dumbfounded by the action before he asked, what are you doing? Instantly Eclair responded, checking for head trauma. Why would you do that? Asked Naruto. I am positive a 4th Shinobi War hasn't started, seeing as how I was at the Fireland's capital city 3 days ago. The most likely reason you would assume that a war broke out a month ago is from head trauma, Eclair replied in a matter-of-fact tone. Sure, tensions are high between the lands, but the village leader in the Leaf Village has been working as a pillar of peace between various villages for years now. Kurama, what's going on? What does Eclair mean there is no war going on? I don't know kid, but she isn't lying, in fact she sounds as if she is completely positive that no war is happening. However, I think I know what might be happening. Right before we fell into that black void I felt a spike in chakra which was undoubtedly Obito's. I think that maybe his space-time jutsu malfunctioned and took us to the past. Seeing Naruto's face go through a variety of emotions, Eclair asked, are you sure you are alright? Try lying down. Just because I can't find anything wrong with your head doesn't necessarily mean you don't have trauma, Eclair suggested in a warm voice. Gathering his thoughts, Naruto had just 2 more questions to ask. Okay, second to last question then, who is the current Hokage of the Leaf? I'm not sure who is sorry Eclair replied in a hushed tone. How do you not know who the Hokage is? They are the strongest shinobi in the Leaf. Well anyways, do you know what the Hokage looks like at least? Naruto questioned, exasperated. Sorry, I only know the current feudal lord of Fire Country. Many civilians don't know too much about the shinobi world. Oh. But I'm positive that the current Hokage has blonde hair. Eclair said in a much chipper voice. Yes. That means the current Hokage is Tsunade Bachan. Sorry for all the questions Eclair, but this is my last one. Naruto said with his signature grin. Eclair was really starting to like Naruto. He seems so happy and he has a kind and caring personality. Not only that, but those eyes of his are so beautiful. I have never seen someone who had azure-colored eyes before. Maybe we can get to know each other more while we travel to the next village. Eclair was almost giggling with excitement when Naruto asked his last question. What day of the year is it? He asked a little sheepishly. Oh? Today is October 10th. With that, Naruto's face brightened up. That meant that he had almost a year before the war would start and since he blacked out on the 7th he was now officially 18. With Eclair's answer, Naruto's grin widened and he said, alright. Thanks so much for everything. Unfortunately I got a lot of stuff to do and only so little time to do it. But that Naruto got up but realized he was in nothing more than his underwear and was still covered with bandages. BHH. Where are my clothes? Shouted Naruto at the top of his lungs. Well your old clothes were completely shredded and covered in blood, so I just tossed them, sorry. Besides the clothes had to come off so I could cover you with bandages. Eclair said once again, with her matter-of-fact tone. Naruto's eyebrows twitched and he whispered, you didn't see it, right? Eclair cocked her head to the side and asked, see what? Naruto instantly began flailing his arms about and said, never mind, never mind. It was nothing, just some stupid thought. Eclair smiled at the blonde's antics and said, well, since you not wearing anything is unacceptable, how about these then? Eclair went over to a chest and pulled out a pair of black sweats, along with a long-sleeve blue shirt that has orange stripes going along the side. Seeing the clothes, Naruto began to smirk and exclaimed, can I have those, they look really cool. Okay Naruto. I was going to get something a little more attractive, but if you like these so much then you can have them, she said with a sigh, hoping she could get the blonde into something a little fancier. Naruto inspected the clothes and said, thanks. These will last a long time too. Well, now that I got something to wear I got to start moving. I promise to pay you back one day, and if you ever come to Konoha, say you know Naruto and someone will point you in my direction. With that, Naruto slipped the clothes on and exited the wagon in one fell swoop. Naruto, just travel with me. Konoha is a 5-day journey by foot and around 3 days by horse or wagon. Eclair said to Naruto as he began jogging alongside of the wagon. Not for me. I know this road. I'll be able to run back to the village in a few hours, said Naruto with a cheeky grin. Eclair was about to argue, but Naruto suddenly burst into flames. His body erupted with orange fire that danced on and around his body. Naruto gave Eclair one final salute and a smile before he disappeared like he was never even there. The second Naruto activated his Kyuubi cloak, he sped off towards Konoha at incomprehensible speeds. An hour or so later, Naruto was running along an all too familiar path though an even more familiar forest. Once the great walls of the leaf were within his view, he deactivated his Kyuubi cloak and started at a leisurely pace to Konoha's entrance. As Naruto neared the front gates he saw the ever too diligent guards Izumo Kamizuki and Katetsu Hagane. As he began to enter the village he smiled at the two who just gave him quizzical looks. After about 3 steps he felt a firm grip on his shoulder and turned to see Izumo. Excuse me, but only Konohan and citizens with the proper paperwork can enter the village, Izumo said with a smile on his face, but his voice full of threats. Boy. What's the deal Izumo? I bet you don't pick on anyone but me, Naruto said with annoyance in his voice as he shrugged the arm off his shoulder. At first Izumo just started at the blonde boy, confused not only as to how he knew his name, but how he associated himself as his friend. Unsure what to do he called in an Anbu squad with his radio. Without warning, Naruto was surrounded by 4 Anbu guards. Please come with us, said one of the 4. He could tell it was a man from his husky voice. The only marker of an identifier was the mouse mask the man wore, which was only slightly different from the other 3. Hey. What's the problem here? Don't you recognize me? I'm Naruto Uzumaki. No response. Come on, everyone knows me, Naruto Uzumaki expressing every syllable in his name to give insult to the intelligence of the Anbu surrounding him. Without even saying anything, the Anbu behind Naruto attempted to hit the back of his neck at a pressure point to cause him to lose consciousness. Instinctively, Naruto moved his arm behind his head catching the blow. Naruto turned his head ever so slightly, sending the man a chilling glare. What's the deal, man? Looking for a fight? Again without warning the 4 Anbu jumped back and began forming hand signs that Naruto recognized as fire style. Fireball jutsu. Again reacting on instincts, Naruto jumped high and away and began running from the Anbu squad. As he began running through the streets of Konoha, he realized 3 things. The first is that for some reason all of the buildings that were destroyed by pain were back. This could have meant that he traveled back further than he anticipated. The second was that even more squads of Anbu started to chase him in an effort to capture him. And the third was that the only way to stop the onslaught of shinobi would be to head to the Hokage's office and get Bachan to call off the attack. But the Anbu squads, and now even a few Junin joining the pursuit, Naruto had began to flow even more chakra into his limbs to give him the speed he needed to outrun his pursuers. As he neared the Hokage's building, he noticed a squad of shinobi holding a formation to defend the building. What the hell is going on? Why the hell is everyone trying to capture me? Realizing he wouldn't be able to get into the Hokage's building alone, he formed his chakra into a jutsu that he was so familiar with that he no longer needed to form a hand sign for it. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. Naruto shouted. The second he did this, the area he was in filled with smoke. After a few seconds the smoke subsided, clearing the area around him which revealed around 100 clones. The clones charging forward began to distract all of the shinobi while he slipped in the Hokage's office through the open window. To his surprise no one was in the office. He walked over to his Tsunade's desk to see a photo frame that was never there before. He picked it up to see something unsettling. There in the frame stood a picture of his mother and father, Minato and Kushina, who had a young girl around the age of 15 between the two. The girl had blonde hair similar in color to Minato's, but had violet eyes like Kushina's. He could tell the girl was obviously the daughter of his parents by the striking resemblance between the two. Looking at the picture caused Naruto's head to spin. There is no way I have a sister. My parents died at my birth due to Obito, so there is no way they would have been able to have a daughter. Even so, there stood a girl, the spitting image of his parents. Unsure of what to do, and with his head spinning, he exited the office from the window he came in. When he landed he saw the last of his shadow clones get finished off, disappearing with a puff of smoke. Then he saw someone he knew and trusted, standing close to the edge of the group of nin that just eradicated his shadow clones. The very sight of the person caused him to relax and calm down. It was the first person who ever loved him, none other than Hinata Hyuga. He walked over and gently placed his hand on her. When Hinata spun to see who was gripping her shoulder, she froze. Naruto began to give her a huge smile and pulled her closer in an attempt to hug her. To his surprise, instead of receiving a warm hug, he got a gentle fist to his chest, filled with enough chakra that almost caused his heart to rupture. Clutching his chest he looked up to see Hinata. Her Byakugan was already activated and her expression carried trace amounts of hate. Looking around he saw that he was surrounded. Doing a full 360 turn he saw numerous allies looking at him with the intent to hurt him, possibly even kill him. He saw Rock Lee, Shikamaru Nara, Kiba Inuzuka, and many more of his friends from Konoha. Kurama, this isn't good. If they are going at me all at once, I won't be able to get out of this alive. I think we're going to have to try Silver Release to get out of this. Silver Release. Something I think I created. Silver Release is when Naruto uses Kurama's chakra, while Kurama gathers natural chakra to give Naruto an unrivaled strength and potency of chakra. I don't know, kid. The last time we tried it, the massive amount of chakra collapsed into us, knocking you out for a few days after it fried your chakra coils. I know, but what other choice do we have but to die if we don't try it? I won't be able to survive with just your chakra. The two, being in an agreement, began to focus their chakra to enter Silver Release. It only took a matter of seconds before Naruto erupted in flames from the Kyuubi's cloak. Once he did, and everyone felt the massive surge of chakra, they backed off, giving Naruto plenty of space. As Kurama began to pull natural chakra into his body, he felt excruciating pain as his body was beginning to collapse in on itself because of the massive amount of chakra that began to form. Right when Naruto thought he was going to collapse and die, the chakra in his body formed an equilibrium. His chakra levels soared and a silver aura of pure chakra radiated from his body. His eyes, normally blue, were now silver with the formation of a star for a pupil. Nearly everyone who surrounded him began to shiver or flee from the massive chakra signature he was emitting. Right when he was sure everyone would flee from him, a woman roared, "Stop." Just from that one command everyone froze. As Ninja began to clear a path so Naruto could see the speaker, he felt as if time froze as he saw who said it. It was none other than Kushina Uzumaki, his deceased mother. "Our village has no qualms with you, stranger. Minato might be away, but I am an S-rank ninja too, don't you know?" Kushina said with a loud voice full of anger. Naruto couldn't say a word, he was frozen, and his body and mind refused to work, not understanding what was happening. Kushina, seeing the boy's indifference, sent out her chakra chains, which have enough strength to suppress even the Kyuubi. She had no doubt it would be able to stop the boy in front of her. To her amazement, the second they hit the boy's silver aura, they bounced off. In that second, fear gripped her. If her chakra chains couldn't even get near the boy, whose chakra levels were so strong they were almost unreadable, she knew that whoever this boy considered an enemy was doomed. Kushina was about to give the order for full retreat and evacuation of the village when the weight of the boy's chakra abruptly stopped. The boy's aura of chakra disappeared and his chakra levels went all the way down to almost zero. Once the chakra left the boy, she could see all of his features. There, the spitting image of Minato stood, with spiky blonde hair and blue eyes. When she saw the whisker marks on the blonde's face, her entire resolve to stop the menace that was invading her village left. While she was looking at the boy's face, tears began to run down from his eyes. The boy began a slow approach to her, his entire body trembling. The boy who just stood before her a minute ago and held enough power to single-handedly destroy the village, looked more weak and vulnerable than a child left alone and abandoned. The boy fell to his knees, extending his arms towards her. Kushina never felt more compelled to do anything in her life. She ran to the boy and embraced him. He embraced her back instantly. The action of what she was doing felt so right and completely natural. Kushina could hear the sobs of the boy and feel the tears beginning to wet her shit. "SHH, it's going to be okay," said Kushina as she soothed Naruto, as she stroked his hair. Never feeling more at peace before, Naruto slowly drifted away and fell asleep. "Hey you. Well, I know that is a sappy ending to the chapter, but this is how I feel Naruto would have reacted if he ever met his mother in reality. Sorry I was a day late with uploading this chapter, but I ended up revising it numerous times to try and get it to what I felt was right. Anyway, I'm not going to upload for about a week. The next week I have an exam and final for a summer class I'm taking, so I need to spend all of my free time studying. However, on the 19th I will take my math final, and right after that my family is going on a beach vacation. The drive is 6 hours, and I won't have to be the one to drive, so that gives me 6 hours to start chapter 3. I doubt I will finish it in that time, but I will most likely have the chapter uploaded before 7:20 seconds. Now, I plan to continue writing this for a while, and I promise an explanation for what's happening next chapter, along with how I plan to proceed with this series. Well, anyway, that is as much as I have to say. If you have the time, please leave a review, and as always my dear readers, I'll be back with a new chapter really soon. Sincerely, Light. Chapter 3. As the first beams of light began to fill the room Naruto was in, he began to arouse. He felt unnaturally groggy as he went to rub his eyes. Looking around, he was in a strange room. It seemed quite homely, having furniture of a normal bedroom. Nightstand, dresser, even a desk. Despite the appearance of the room, Naruto realized it was more of a cell. The walls were made of stone with a window having bars on the outside to prevent him from escaping. Even the door was large and made of reinforced steel. The first thought that crossed Naruto's mind was how he got here. The second Naruto thought of his last memory, his body began to shudder. He remembered the strange occurrence of his friends attacking him and chasing him throughout Konoha. While he was going through the previous day's events, he remembered his encounter with Kushina. A mixture of emotions rushed through his head and his breath started to quicken, almost instantly becoming ragged. Naruto's first thought was he was under the infinite Tsukiyomi and that he failed in stopping Madara. Slowly, though, he pushed the thoughts out, because if he was under infinite Tsukiyomi, his ideal world wouldn't have his friends trying to kill him. Almost going into a panic attack, he came to the conclusion that he was under an extremely powerful genjutsu. He began to mold his chakra only to feel an unbearable burning sensation in his chest. Panicking, he pulled off his shirt and looked at his chest to see an intricate seal that was meant to prevent him from molding chakra. Frantically, Naruto refused to be tricked by the genjutsu as he brought forth Kurama's chakra as the Kyuubi cloak began to form on him. Right when the cloak formed, his body surged with waves of pain as the seal refused to let him mold chakra. Stop it, kid. This seal is S-ranked at least. It is almost as powerful as the seal that was placed on me. In Naruto's panic, he dismissed the fox, believing he was an apparition created from the genjutsu he was under. Naruto brought forth another large amount of the Kyuubi's chakra, only for the pain to increase tenfold. The second he did, alarms started going off and Nin dressed in medical cloths rushed into the room. Kid, if you don't stop you could kill yourself. All the chakra you form is transferred in raw energy to break your body apart. Idiot, stop. Kurama roared. They began to restrain him, and in doing so Naruto's panic only increased. Refusing to accept the false reality he believed he was in, Naruto brought forth as much of Kurama's chakra that his body could handle. When he did, instead of feeling the pain of the seal, he looked down to see it distorted. He broke it. With more and more staff entering his room, Naruto sent out numerous chakra claws to knock the medical personnel out of the room or into walls, knocking them unconscious. Naruto then took all of the chakra in his system and sent it out with a large burst while he screamed release. The amount of chakra that Naruto released would have been enough to stop even the most powerful S-ranked genjutsu. The burst of chakra was enough to cover the entire village, and almost every ninja froze, feeling the overwhelming force pass by them. When the world around him didn't melt away, he began to panic and thought that he would need even more chakra to break his genjutsu. Right before he began to form another wave of chakra, he saw someone and froze. When Kushina felt the powerful surge of chakra, she woke up from the chair she was sleeping in and raced to the blonde's room. Right when she arrived, the medical staff were pushed from his room with what looked like pure chakra. As she sensed the strange claws, she could tell it was exactly what she thought it was. Right when she reached the doorway, the boy was covered in orange flames that radiated from his body. She sensed the cloak was powerful pure chakra. She never saw anything like it before. Within seconds of her arrival to the room, it exploded in light as a huge burst of chakra rushed from the boy's body and exploded outwards. How is he doing this? The seal I put on him was strong enough to even contain some of the tailed beasts. The boy looked exhausted, dark circles forming under his eyes. He was slouched from the evident exhaustion that was filling his body. She could see the seal she placed on his chest was distorted and broken. She compared his appearance from yesterday, which now seemed much darker and void of the uncertainty she saw earlier in his eyes. Now he appeared feral, ready to attack anything he saw. His eyes had a clear intent to hurt anyone or anything willing to come near him. Kushina's body was screaming for her to react, so she pulled out a kunai ready to defend herself. Then something just as strange as yesterday happened. The second the boy looked at her, he froze. He didn't react at all. The only thing changing about the boy who just froze up was the flicker of emotion she could see passing through his blue eyes. Not sure whether to engage the boy or try to talk, yet another unpredictable thing happened. The room was filled with the grotesque sound of a popping noise. Kushina looked at the boy to see he used one of his thumbs to break his pinky on his left hand. She saw no pain cross his face as his did so. He held the same empty stare at her as he had the second he saw her. A second passed and a second sickening popping noise filled the room. Kushina dropped her kunai and walked over to the boy. She saw him moving to beak a third finger of his left hand and raised her hand in the air. Naruto, after breaking a second finger and not feeling the world around him fade away, froze. Why hasn't the Genjutsu ended yet? Not only have I sent a chakra wave to disrupt it, but I also broke 2 of my fingers. I should have snapped out of it by now. Thinking he needed to force himself into more pain, he moved his pointer finger to break his middle one, which would leave him with 3 broken fingers. The pain would definitely wake him up from the Genjutsu. The second he was about to break it, he felt a strong force hit his left cheek with enough force to turn his head to the side. The simple impact of the slap was enough to bring him somewhat back to his senses. When he turned his head back, he saw Kushina standing in front of him, crying. "What are you doing, Dadabane?" she shrieked. Naruto's brain couldn't understand what was happening. Right in front of him stood his supposedly deceased mother who looked very much alive. The only way he was wrapping his head around the events of the last 3 days was the fact that he believed he traveled through time from Obito's Mangekyou Sharingan. However, he knew that wasn't possible seeing as his friends his age are living in the village, as well as his mother being alive and well. There was no way he could fathom how things were happening around him, except for some sick Genjutsu that was placed on him. But, Naruto knew he wasn't in a Genjutsu anymore, seeing as how he used more than enough methods to escape even the most powerful of Genjutsus. Naruto, nearly driving himself to insanity trying to think of an answer to his problems, felt a warm embrace around him. He stiffened as he realized that his mother was hugging him. "This can't be happening," Naruto said in a barely audible voice. "It can and it is, you idiot," Kushina said in between sobs. Kushina released the boy from the hug and held her hands on his shoulders, looking him in the eye. "I know you think you are in a Genjutsu, but what is happening is very real," Kushina said, her voice starting to pick up confidence. "No. This can't be real, you are dead," said Naruto, his voice completely devoid of emotion. "How can you say that I am alive here in front of you right here, right now, Dadabane?" Kushina yelled, her voice beginning to pick up a hint of anger. "I know you can't be alive because you and Dad died protecting me the day I was born, Dadabeo," Naruto shouted, his voice shaking from rage and melancholy. Kushina froze, not sure what to do. She never left the hospital that Naruto was held in, refusing to be very far from the boy who she believed to be her missing son. Exactly 18 years from this day, her son was kidnapped from a strange man wearing an orange mask and a black cloak. The second he appeared, he took Naruto from the nurse, holding him, and began to flicker away from reality. His body distorted as he was pulled in on himself to Kushina's horror, as the kidnapper and her newly born son disappeared from existence, not leaving a single trace. The boy who now stood before her looked exactly like Minato. Blonde, spiky hair, blue eyes, and even a similar jawline. Not sure what to do, she simply asked the boy his name. "What is your name?" "What?" the boy responded. "Your name," Kushina restated the question. "You should know it, you gave it to me, Naruto." Knowing that only herself, Minato, Jiraiya and a few select others knew the name of her kidnapped son, she did something she wanted to do her entire life. She pulled Naruto in such a tight hug and said, "I found you, I finally found you after all these years." Naruto, not understanding anything that was happening, decided he just didn't care. The one person who he always wished he had in his life was right in front of him. Who cares if none of this makes sense? The one thing I have ever wanted is right here with me. A family, no, my family. Deciding to just accept the unacceptable, Naruto put his arms around his mother and hugged her back. He rested his chin on Kushina's shoulder and closed his eyes. As he opened them, he saw a girl not much younger than him, with her face twisted in a snarl, standing at the door to the room. She had blonde hair and violet eyes. Naruto swore he saw the girl before, but before he could react, she ran forward and yelled, "Get down." By simply observing the young girl, Naruto could tell she was a seasoned shinobi. The girl reached for a pole on her back, but to his surprise, when she brought it into her hands, it was a scythe. Naruto knew he had few seconds to react, but with his few precious seconds to defend himself, he used them to move Kushina to safety and out of harm's way. Kushina, oblivious to everything but her long-lost child, didn't even hear the scream from behind her. She only started to come back to reality when she felt Naruto move his arms down to her sides, but before she could say anything, Naruto threw her with such ease that she didn't have time to react. As she started to spin, her body in midair, Kushina was horrified by the scene in front of her. Her eldest daughter pulled her blade against her missing elder brother. The girl aimed to slice Naruto in half. As the scythe went to slice him diagonally, he was barely able to dodge by stepping back and spinning, showing his back to his enemy. Normally he would never leave himself so open, but with his front hidden, he would be able to form a Rasengan without her noticing. As he continued to turn, his eyes widened. Instead of the girl stopping her swing to defend herself, she was continuing the momentum of the swing by using her body as an axle to increase the speed of her scythe. It was rotating around her torso, using the blade's weight as a pendulum. Even before Naruto could fully turn around, the pole end of the scythe smashed into the side of his head and sent him reeling. The strength of the impact caused his vision to flicker. When he felt his body hit the floor, he regained his vision to see the girl standing above him with her scythe's tip poised inches above his neck. Kushina's eyes then started to bulge as she saw Lecky form a Rasengan in her other hand, ready to mercilessly attack her brother. A second before the Rasengan would hit, Kushina screamed, "Stop!" And she instantly froze. Naruto watched as the Rasengan faded in the girl's left hand as she stopped the control and circulation of chakra to make it. She did, however, not move the scythe a single millimeter. Why should I stop? Because of this boy the entire village was distracted solely on him. While our shinobi tried to capture him, a group of nin kidnapped Raaza. How could you leave her with only a citizen? She is only 10 and the child of a cage. How could you leave her unprotected for so long? What could you possibly be doing that is more important than your family's safety? But dad gone, you knew it would be dangerous, so why? Why? Before Lecky began screaming in rage, Naruto had already begun pulling natural chakra into his body. He entered Sage mode within a few seconds and started to search for the chakra signature of the girl Raaza. He knew that if she was within 100 miles he could be able to locate her within a few minutes. Kushina was silent for a few seconds. Her face was hidden as she hung her head. How could I think my son would return after 18 years? He is probably a nin from another village that was sent to distract us while they kidnapped my daughter. I'm not sure how he knew Naruto's name, but that is for another time. Kushina raised her head, revealing her face. Her expression was firm and in her eyes, one could see the years and knowledge that shaped her into the fearsome shinobi she was. Restrain the boy and escort him to the intelligence division. There, have Ibiki find out everything he knows. I am going to get 3 Anbu squads to search for Raaza, Kushina ordered in a very authoritative voice. Lecky nodded and moved to restrain the boy, but when he opened his eyes she flinched. They were yellow and looked similar to a frog's. Before she could say something to Kushina, Naruto said, "I found her," his voice holding a sweet tone. Kushina's anger flared and sarcastically she said, "Found who?" When she looked at the boy again, she was transfixed on his eyes. Senjutsu? That's impossible, only Jiraiya and Minato have the Toad contract, and Jiraiya is the only one who can control natural chakra. It has to be some sort of genjutsu or contact lens. She is around 30 miles out and moving quickly with a squad of 4 ninja. I should be able to get her and bring her back within an hour. Oh? Is that so? Even if that was true, how could you possibly catch up to them and return within an hour? It takes an hour for the average shinobi to travel 25 miles. Think before you speak, moron, then maybe someone would believe your lies. Lecky said in an annoyed tone. In response, the blonde boy smiled. Lecky was slightly taken aback because the smile was earnest and honest. It was unbefitting of someone in his position. Like this, Naruto replied as he moved his hand towards the scythe poised at his neck. Naruto then firmly grabbed the scythe as he effortlessly moved it away. Regardless of how much force Lecky put into moving her scythe, it had no effect. She struggled to stop the boy, but he was unfazed by it. The sharp end of the scythe was pressed firmly into the boy's hand, but it wouldn't cut and not a single drop of blood could be seen. Once he cautiously stood up, Naruto walked over to the stone wall. Kushina and Lecky just watched the boy for a second, transfixed by the fact that Lecky's scythe couldn't even cut the boy. Naruto turned around and faced his mother and the peculiar girl in the room. He lifted his arm parallel to the ground and tightened a fist. He then brought it against the wall, which instantly gave way and made an exit big enough for him to walk out through. Be back in an hour, I promise, Naruto said before he jumped out of the room with such speed that Lecky believed he wasn't even human. As Naruto sped out of the village in seconds, he closed his eyes and focused all of his senses on the kidnapped girl miles out. Her chakra signal would be much harder to track now that he was moving. Not being able to pull in natural chakra while moving, he would need Kurama's help if he was going to gather more natural chakra now. He knew Kurama wouldn't be too keen to comply, seeing as how he yelled at him earlier and dismissed his existence altogether too. You there, Kurama? After no response, he knew he wouldn't get the fox's help for a while, so instead he focused on just pressing on forward. Wish I could use Kurama's chakra to get there faster. I would be able to almost half my time, but I need Senjutsu to track this girl. Man, this sucks. This is gonna take forever. Naruto thought as he sped toward the group of 4 nin plus 1. But the wind whipping at his face and the blur of the scenery as he sped past it, Naruto would reach his target in no time at all. After about 20 minutes of running, Naruto was running low on natural chakra but could see the group of nin around half a mile ahead. He formed the last of the natural chakra into his limbs and 2 Rasengans as he pushed forward. The nin in the back of the group only saw a flicker as Naruto passed him in a blur. Naruto surged forward at the leader of the group, who was wearing an Anbu mask that had no village affiliation on it. Without any of the nin noticing Naruto, he pressed his two Rasengan's into the Anbu's back, which pushed him into the ground, creating a small crater. The other three ninja froze and looked at Naruto before one shouted, "It's Minato, the yellow flash. Drop the girl and retreat." But that said the man who was holding an unconscious child, dropped her and fled with his comrades. Naruto jumped into the air and gently wrapped his arms around the girl in a bridal-style hold as he did a flip and landed gracefully on the ground. When he turned around, he saw that the three shinobi fled, with one of them carrying their unconscious leader in tow. "Cowards," Naruto muttered as he saw them running. He decided not to pursue and just head back to the village instead, with the girl in his arms. When he looked at the girl, he stiffened. There in his arms was a mini Kushina. She had nearly an identical face with the same red hair that nearly all Uzumakas had. Not realizing who the girl was, he simply shrugged and moved her onto his back to carry her piggyback style. He stood still for a second as he pulled in just enough natural energy to make his way back to the village in a timely manner. In 15 minutes he was on the road back to Konoha with a 15-minute walk back to the village. Naruto slowed down and started to walk as he used the last bit of natural chakra in his system. He felt exhausted. So much had happened today that left his body tired and his mind numb. Not only was he pressed to his limits by using silver release, which ended up backlashing on him and knocking him out when he stopped molding the chakra in his system together in a mix. Naruto also had the mental pressure of seeing his deceased mother, as well as all of his friends in the village, who were all trying to kill him. While he was going over the events of the day, trying to create a situation that could have made today's events real, he felt the girl on his back beginning to stir. "Hey there, you okay?" Naruto said in a gruff tone. He never was that good with children, seeing as how the only one that would talk to him before he defeated Pain was Konohamaru. The girl stiffened at the blonde's words, but to his surprise, she pulled her arms around his neck and buried her head into the crane of his neck. After a second, he felt the girl shudder and begin to sob, with tears staining his neck. "Hey, it's okay now, you're safe. No one will be able to hurt you as long as I am here," Naruto said soothingly, hoping to calm the girl. "Dad, I was so scared. Those mean men attacked Ms. AM before they grabbed me. I thought I would never ever see your mommy again," the girl sputtered in between sobs. "Hey kid, I'm not your dad, but I will promise to always protect you, so you can rely on me. Once we get back to the village I'm sure your mom and dad will be thrilled to have you safely back," Naruto said in an amused voice. "Can't believe the kid mistook me for her dad. She must have been pretty scared." The girl began to fidget, indicating she wanted to be let down. Naruto went to one knee to let her down. The second she was on the ground, she ran around to the front of Naruto and looked at his face. She was intently staring at his face as she wore a pout. "You look just like my dad though. You have blonde hair and blue eyes too. If you didn't have those whiskers you would look just like him," the girl explained, already dismissing her sadness, much like children tend to do. Naruto just stared for a minute before he started to burst out laughing. "Hey kid, come on, I can't look that much like your dad. I mean, look at me, I'm only 18. You're making me feel like an old man Dadabeo." Naruto bellowed as he struggled to talk with his laughing fit. The girl's pout increased and a frown formed on her forehead from being made fun of. She tried to remain dignified as she raised her head and looked away from the blonde. After a minute or two Naruto's laughter died down and he was left with silence and the brooding girl beside him. Naruto chuckled as he looked at the girl beside him before saying, "Come on, let's go. We won't get back to the village by just staying here." But that he started walking away. At first she didn't follow, but after a few seconds she raced towards him and grabbed his hand. When he looked at her with a questioning glaze, she merely looked away with her head raised high in the air. Naruto chuckled and the girl looked at him and gave him a huge grin. "What's your name, mister?" she said while smiling at him. "Naruto," he answered. "What does fish cake have to do with your name?" asked the girl. "My name is Naruto Baka, Naruto Uzumaki," he said with a snort. "Don't call me a baka. Your parents are bakas for naming you Naruto," the girl retorted. "Well, since you know my name, what is yours?" Naruto inquired. "It's Raaza, but one E-san says I'm not allowed to tell strangers my last name. She is really scary and she is a master with a scythe weapon. I can't make one E-san scary, you see," Raaza said in a matter-of-fact tone. Naruto chuckled before saying, "I think I met your sister a little earlier today, is her name Leki?" Yup, that's her." "Well, since you know one E-san and you did save me, I guess I could tell you my full name," Raaza said in a gleeful tone. "My name is Raaza Namikaze," the girl said with pride in her voice. Naruto froze and stopped walking as Raaza said her last name. His mind was in overdrive and thoughts were flooding his head. He could faintly hear Raaza asking what was wrong. His brain was beginning to wrap around the events that happened in the past 3 days. The thought that explained everything that was happening right up till now popped into his head as it demanded his full attention. Obito's Manjikam Sharingan was never a time and space jutsu. I could jump through space by bending time with precise chakra control seals using his Hirishin, but Obito simply would exist or not exist. His ability allowed him to create or travel to dimensions closer similar to ours. I don't get it but I do at the same time. I'm a genius. Naruto thought as a smile played on his lips. Took you long enough, kid. I knew that if you didn't figure it out you would never have understood it if I tried telling you. So let me be so kind as to enlighten you as to what has happened to us. The fox said in his head. You knew what happened to us, Kurama. Why didn't you say something then? Naruto said, protesting the fox's earlier statement. Be silent. I just told you why I didn't tell you. That head of yours has a hard time understanding things that many consider second nature. Telling you this without you realizing it would be similar to a teacher telling a student who has no understanding of chakra how medical ninjutsu works. Now stop talking before I make it so you can't speak anymore. Kurama snarled in an annoyed tone full of arrogance. Yes, so powerful Kyuubi, Naruto thought sarcastically. Kurama's snarl grew. He hated being called the Kyuubi, a name labeled to him by humans. He slowly let the snarl dissipate as he glared at the boy. I will start where it all began. The night you were born Obito came to release the seal on Kushina and free me, as you know. However, after reviewing your memories, before Obito and Minato engaged in combat, Obito transported himself to a dimension completely identical to this one, that being the one you grew up in. Now let's call this dimension Alpha and the one you grew up in Beta. Seeing as how two Narutos or for that matter two of anything can't exist at exactly the same time or place as the other, the Alpha you and Beta you joined into one being. This is probably why your chakra reserves are so plentiful. While Uzumaki's had abnormally high reserves, yours were on a whole different level than most. You had twice the amount of chakra that even the most powerful of the Uzumaki clan members could have, Kurama said with a hint of realization. After a brief pause he continued. With that, you continued life in the Beta world. You stayed there until 3 days ago when Obito's chakra spiked before we were thrown back into the Alpha world. With this I am assuming that Obito died and without his powers to regulate the changes between the worlds, you and everything else he moved between worlds were sent back to their original ones. The reason I did not stay in the Beta world is because you opened the seal without releasing me. Not being able to rip me from you seeing as how I am essentially a part of you now we stayed together. Knowing this, there should also be an Alpha world Kurama which I might be able to absorb doubling my power, Kurama said wickedly. Before Naruto could say anything to continue the conversation, the sound of a crying child brought him back to reality. There Raaza was crying and saying things like, Naruto hates me because he hates dad. Naruto frantically started waving his arms about and making goofy faces until the girl noticed and stopped crying. No, I don't hate your dad, Raaza, not at all. He said as he smiled. He went to the girl, knelt beside her, and pulled her into a hug. I'm sorry Raaza, I didn't mean to scare or ignore you, I just remembered something really important. Naruto said in a nervous and croaky voice. Like what? The girl asked. I just remembered I left a bowl of milk out and thought of how crappy my room is gonna smell now, there is no way she is going to believe that crappy excuse. Think of another idiot. That and I don't want to upset your dad for taking so long to bring you back. Yeah, so let's get moving. Naruto said rather quickly. Oh. Okay, let's get going Ani-san. Raaza said as a huge smile spread across her face. Ani-san? Naruto asked. Yay Ani-san. You saved me and look just like my missing big brother, so you are Ani-san. Raaza said triumphantly. But that said, the two continued onward to the village. As they got closer he saw a large group of people at the entrance. At a certain point he saw red hair in the crowd and the second he saw it, Raaza saw it too. Look, there's mommy. She said, happiness filling her face. Well don't wait for me, get going, he said as a smile spread across his face. Raaza started to race to the village and Naruto started to wave. No one seemed to move a muscle as all eyes watched him. But the group of nin were the elites of Konoha with Minato in the front. Minato was thinking of how he got back from his meeting with Kumagakure to find the village in shambles. From the reports he read when he arrived half an hour ago, he learned of the strange boy who had the power to destroy the village by himself, who appeared and left without a trace, saying he was going to bring back his kidnapped daughter. He didn't know how to make heads or tails of the situation. Deep in his thoughts he saw two people approach the village, one he recognized while the other he assumed to be the boy from the report. Damn him, he thought, as he saw the boy holding his daughter's hand, he must be using the Raaza to protect himself. She must be scared and frightened, but he is shamelessly using her body as a shield. Just then the boy pointed to them and to his surprise, he let her run towards the village as he continued to walk. The second he knew the boy was far enough away that he wouldn't be able to reach his daughter in time, he threw one of his three-pronged kunai, masking it as if he were waving back to the boy. Back with Naruto's blonde head at the front moved his arms looking like he was going to wave back. However after a second passed a kunai raced by his head and the second it did he heard a snap like thunder. As he turned his head he saw his father there who looked older than he remembered. Before Naruto could even blink fast enough, Minato moved his arm to chop Naruto's neck to hit a pressure point to knock him out. The second he did, his limbs went limp and his vision faded as he was lost in his thoughts. Chapter 4. The second Naruto lost consciousness, Minato caught him and checked his pulse to make sure he was still alive. The second he felt a pulse he quickly began to draw the strongest two ninjutsu seals he knew on the boy. The first was a paralysis seal on his back to restrict his ability to move. With this seal Naruto would have difficulty to simply walk. Once he finished the seal Minato went about to draw a chakra suppression seal when he was surprised by his daughter running into him, hitting him with her tiny fists. Dad, stop. Don't hurt Naruto Oni-chan. He saved me from the bad guys. Why are you hurting him? Raaza wailed as she batted her father. At first, Minato froze. Naruto. I haven't heard that name for 18 years, there is no way this is him. Minato was deep in thought as he began to process the information. He then decided to ask, what do you mean he is your Oni-chan, Raaza dear? He asked in the sweet tone that only a father can use when talking to a daughter. Seeing that Minato stopped messing with Naruto using his seal she said, I'll tell you only if you promise to stop hurting Naruto Oni-chan in an adult-like behavior. At first Minato was surprised by what Raaza said. She would capture the heart of whoever she talked to, but she rarely took a liking to strangers. Furthermore, he never expected this kind of behavior from her. Whenever Minato asked her anything she was more than willing to comply to make him happy. He had never seen his daughter this serious before, the always carefree girl had such a look of determination that he was slightly taken aback. Okay sweetie, I promise I won't hurt Naruto, besides I had no intention to. These seals are used to suppress him and not hurt him at all. He has a lot of strength that he has trouble controlling, he said with a smile. Oh, okay well this is Naruto Uzumaki my new Oni-chan. The girl explained with a trill. For a second time Minato froze at the girl's words. Few knew the name of their stolen son, along with what he might look like at this age, but almost no one knew Kushina was of Uzumaki heritage. He turned the boy over to see his face as he began to study it. Seeing the identical whisker marks on his baby 18 years ago, he had a sense of joy wash over him, but it was quickly dismissed as shinobi instinct started to kick in. He ran his finger along the whisker marks, only to feel bare skin. With this he realized that there was a chance, no matter how slim, that this boy was his son. Hey Raaza. I'm sure Naruto is tired so I'm going to take him somewhere to rest. Go tell your mother for me alright? He said with a voice that a father uses when there is absolutely no room for discussion. Raaza nodded and with that Minato activated his Hiraishin as he teleported to the intelligence division. Everyone turned their heads to see the Hokage appear out of thin air with another blonde boy in his arms. It only took a few seconds for the head of the division, Ibiki Marino, to appear before Minato and ask, what do you need Hokage? I need you to go through all the memories of this boy. However, I want you to take things slowly and be sure not to cause him any pain. Even if you have to take a month to complete the task painlessly, he said while glaring at Ibiki. Ibiki was one of the best at what he does, but unfortunately what he does can cause serious damage to one's mental stability when he rushes. Ibiki nodded and said, I will use all of our resources to complete this task in a timely manner with the constraints you placed, in a tone completely lacking any interest. Good, I'm taking him down to the mind-reading amplification machine. Send Inoichi down in 5 minutes, I need to finish a few seals before he starts. But that said Minato headed for the basement of the facility as he carried Naruto under one arm. When he reached the room with the machine he set the boy down and started to draw a chakra suppression seal. The second he finished, Inoichi entered into the grand room with 3 other shinobi to help him with the process of going through the blonde's memories. Very quickly before any of them would see or notice, Minato took a swab with a Q-tip in the boy's mouth. He quickly put the culture into a glass vial and smiled when Inoichi reached him. Good to see you Inoichi. I hope your family is doing well, Minato said as he smiled at his old friend. Yes and to you the same Hokage. He replied with a smile as the two shook hands. So, I'm assuming this is the boy here, he said, while glancing at the boy at Minato's feet. Yes this is him. For now we believe his name is Naruto, other than that he is a complete mystery. I'm sure Ibiki gave you the details, but there is one more thing I need to ask. While you are going through his memories, don't file a report, just come straight to me and tell me what they are, Minato said as his smile dropped, focusing on the seriousness of the matter. Inoichi nodded and Minato decided to stay for a little bit to make sure the boy wouldn't violently react to the procedure. Minato went to the corner of the room and once the blonde was hooked up and all the nin took up their respective positions, Inoichi placed his hand on the boy's head and said, commence. With that, the machine started to buzz as the 3 nin regulated it as Inoichi entered the boy's mind. Inoichi was more than surprised that when he entered the boy's mind he ended up in a square white room with nothing in it but a chair. Afraid the boy had defenses and traps set up in his mind, he went about to thoroughly check the room for a way out. After coming up dry he walked over to the chair and inspected it. It was a simple wooden chair with nothing unusual or peculiar about it. Inoichi tentatively touched the chair and after no violent reaction he sighed in relief. First he tried moving the chair slightly, but it didn't budge. Curious, he put all of his strength into moving it, but it didn't budge an inch. After weighing his choices for a minute or so, Inoichi decided to sit in the chair. When he did, the wall produced letters which then started forming together to say only Minato Namikaze may move past this room. Curious, Inoichi stood up to inspect the letters, but the second he did they vanished into the wall. Slightly annoyed he tried for a couple of more minutes in an attempt to find a way out of the room, but to no avail. Inoichi never met such a strong defense in any of the mines that he invaded and was slightly taken aback by not being able to make any headway. He decided to leave the boy's mind and tell Minato what he found. Minato was about to head upstairs and run a DNA analysis test on the boy's cheek cells when he heard the machine stop buzzing. He turned to look at Inoichi, who gestured him over. "I have never seen a defensive barrier like the one this boy has," Inoichi stated as he shook his head. "What do you mean? Was the information scattered or undecipherable?" Minato inquired. "No, that's the thing. I wasn't able to find anything," Inoichi said. Inoichi then gave Minato a full report of what he encountered in the boy's head. After Inoichi finished, Minato closed his eyes as he appeared deep in thought. After a minute, Minato opened his eyes and looked at Inoichi. "I am going to enter the boy's mind," he said in an authoritative voice. "Minato, I don't think this is wise. It's most likely a trap. If it is, you won't know how to properly defend against it and it could damage your brain." "Think of" was as far as Inoichi got before Minato interrupted and said, "Your concerns are duly noted, but I have already decided on this. Please get everyone to leave the room. I will use shadow clones to help me run the machine," Minato said, leaving no room for a rebuttal. Inoichi sighed and signaled for everyone to leave the room. Once everyone was out, 3 clones popped into existence and took up the positions to monitor the chakra controls on the machine. Minato outstretched his hand toward the boy's head. He stopped right before touching the blonde's head, considering his choice once more. After a small but quick internal debate, Minato decided to continue as he placed his hand on the blonde's head and was quickly sucked into his mindscape. Once everything came into focus, Minato looked around to see his surroundings were exactly as Inoichi described them. Deciding to waste no time, Minato walked over to the wooden chair and sat down. At first there was no reaction, but then letters started floating across the room on the walls. They quickly moved to the wall in front of him and after a second spelled welcome. Just as quickly as he read it, the walls started to shimmer as they appeared to break into thousands of pieces. These pieces turned into butterflies as they flew away, revealing Minato's surroundings to be similar to that of the forest surrounding Konoha. Slightly awed by the effect of the walls turning into butterflies and flying away, it took a few moments before Minato started to walk into the forest. The first thing he noticed were the numerous scrolls in the thousands of trees. Curious, he went to retrieve one, but as his hand was inches from the scroll, an invisible barrier prevented him from grabbing it. Deciding to just ignore the scrolls and continue deeper in the forest, Minato continued onward. After minutes of walking past trees full of scrolls, he spotted a clearing ahead. At first Minato was blinded when he entered the clearing. The trees made a perfect overcast to block most of the sun in the boy's mindscape, but once he entered the clearing, the bright light was enough to make him close his eyes. He continued to walk forward while blocking the light with one hand as he squinted his eyes. Once his eyes started to adjust, he saw he was in a grassy meadow with a flower here or there. The last thing Minato expected to see was a giant fox with 9 tails staring at him with an amused grin. The second he saw the beast, he instantly thought it was some sort of mental barrier or trap and threw his 3-pronged kunai all over the meadow. To his surprise, the beast merely started to laugh maniacally. "I never thought I would see you again, fourth Hokage. Especially after I put my claw through your heart," the fox said with a sneer. "I think I would remember such an event like that, especially if it was with an unsavory one such as yourself," Minato retorted, completely calm. Kurama hated the fourth for numerous reasons. One, obviously for being sealed inside an infant on the day he was released from his seal. However, what Kurama truly hated about the fourth Hokage was his attitude. Nearly all humans, except for a few, were afraid of him, if not that then they respected him. But Minato truly was an exception. He held an air of superiority around the fox that he just couldn't stand. He treated Kurama's existence as nothing more than an inconvenience. Kurama's face started twisting into a snarl as a low growl emitted from his throat. Before he could say anything, Minato asked, "So what are you? Some sort of barrier to prevent me from entering any deeper in the boy's mind?" After a few seconds, Kurama decided to just get the conversation over with as quickly as possible. "No, in fact you were transported to the deepest level of Naruto's psyche. In addition, I am no apparition, but in fact the feared 9-tailed fox," Kurama stated quite evenly. To his surprise, Minato started to laugh and said, "Do you think of me a fool? The Kyuubi cannot exist here when I know for a fact he is somewhere else." Besides, do you expect me to believe that the near embodiment of hate allowed itself to reside in a human without a seal to hold him in place without escaping? The fox was silent for a few seconds before saying, as plainly as possible, this human, no your son, has shown me that you beings are capable of understanding us Biju. Until I deem it necessary, I will not separate myself from Naruto's body. Minato just stared at the fox for a second, letting the word sink in. He was running over what he said as he chose to ask, what do you mean he understands the Biju? Until today I have yet to hear of Naruto from any other village. For a Jinchuriki to move between villages and talking to other Jinchuriki is unheard of. How do you expect me to believe the things you say which are full of nothing but nonsense? Instead of me telling you, I will show you something, was all the fox said as the world around them twisted and dissolved, revealing the surroundings of a sower. Minato looked around to see he was in a large room made of concrete walls. On the walls were pipes that cascaded around the room, some letting water flow to the ground. Minato couldn't see the ground since he was standing in murky water up to his ankles. Behind him was the only exit and ahead was some sort of giant cage. What is this place? It doesn't seem very fitting a place for someone to have in their mind, Minato stated. This was the deepest level of the kid's mind. Here was once a representation of his view on life as well as all of the information and memories filling the rooms elsewhere in this sewer. What lies behind me is the seal that used to imprison me. I'm sure that just by looking at it you will understand, Kurama said in a droll, uninterested voice. Curious, Minato looked past the fox to see an intricate seal. It took him a few seconds, but when he recognized it, he gasped. There was an 8-trigram seal that Minato created many years ago, but never implemented. To simply make the seal he would need the help of 7 other shinobi with cage-level chakra. Knowing that no one made this seal in his lifetime left only one other option. That option was to use a forbidden technique to create such a seal that only Minato, Kushina, and the retired 3rd Hokage knew, the dead demon-consuming seal. Upon seeing the 4th Hokage frozen with his mouth open, gaping at the seal, Kurama started to chuckle. From your expression I can tell that you are wondering how such a seal could have existed. Since I am feeling more than generous today, I will show you the entire life of the kid, from the moment he entered the world, up until today, Kurama said with a sneer. You will I suppose I am interested in the boy's life, but I cannot stay here for months waiting for me to review his life, so I will have to decline, Minato said in a somewhat friendly manner. Not to worry 4th. Here in the mind things are much quicker than in reality. Also, with my assistance you will be able to see the life of the kid in mere minutes, Kurama said with a smirk. Before Minato could respond, his mind was flooded with memories and his body was filled with foreign senses. Back in reality, Minato's body stiffened from the overflow of information into his mind. His head snapped back as his eyes and mouth opened in pain. If any of the intelligence division was there, they would have been sure to sever the connection between the two. As seconds ticked by, years flew by in his head. There, he observed the life of the boy Naruto, though his eyes were startled with surprise as he saw the Kyuubi released and sealed within him. Minato took account of all the major events in the boy's life that he would need to know. The events of him leaving their wood for an identical one. The boy's first B-rank mission which turned to A. The hate and hardships he faced from just living in the village. The hate and contempt that the adults held towards him. Then he saw the betrayal of his first friend. The pain in his heart. The 3 years of training that he had with Jiraiya. The mastering of Sage Mode. The battle with Pain, a SS rank nin. So much more memories that at the end of them Minato blacked out. When he came to, he was back in the meadow with the fox staring at him with an annoyed look on his face. Now you see who this boy really is. You now know the pain he has faced and overcome. I even do not know how to approach this scenario he has found himself in. I'm sure he is going to blindly charge forward claiming to bring peace to the world, but who knows, Kurama said as he trailed off in thought. Minato couldn't believe what he just saw. Not only did he see that his son was alive and well to this day, he was right in front of him healthy and strong. His son, who had mastered Sage Mode and the Kyuubi's power. His son who always succeeded no matter how impossible the task. His son who never gave up and always stuck to his word. Minato's chest was swelling with pride. However, a small part of his mind was tingling with doubt as the thought at the back of his head screamed it was a trap. Kurama, seeing the emotions taking a change for the worse asked, in a flat tone full of annoyance, what proof could you want now? Let me talk to Naruto, I need to make sure it's him and that all this isn't some sort of mental jinjutsu, Minato said with seriousness filling his tone. The fox snorted and said, if this was a jinjutsu, it would rival that of Tsukiyomi that only the most talented Uchiha can master. Even if you wish to talk to the boy, you can't. He is resting now and won't be able to wake up for a couple of days because of a certain someone, said the fox with eyes that questioned Minato's intelligence. If you don't believe me, come closer and look at him resting at my feet. After that, if you still hold doubts, take that swab you took of the boy and test it to see if it is a match with your own, Kurama said, as his patience was growing thin. But that said, Minato moved forward and when he was right below the fox, he saw the blonde sleeping peacefully in a bed of grass. At first he wondered how he was able to look so peaceful after now knowing what he has faced in his life. Deciding to take Kurama's advice, he left the mindscape and saw Naruto completely restrained in the barbaric device they used to interrogate ninja spies and felt a twang of pain in his chest. He immediately walked over to a button to request help. The second he pressed it, Inoichi entered with the 3 nin who were operating the machine earlier. Thankful Inoichi didn't go back to work but monitored him from the one-way mirror in the room next to him. Minato asked in a friendly tone, "Please release the boy for me." Inoichi nodded and signaled for the 3 other nin to assist him. After a few seconds Naruto was released and laid down at the foot of the machine. "Do you need anything else, Minato?" Inoichi asked. "No, that is all. You and your subordinates can return back to your duties," Minato replied, with a small smile playing on his lips. Inoichi raised an eyebrow at Minato's words and actions, but decided to dismiss his questions. He nodded as he and the 4 shinobi left the interrogation room and headed back to their daily activities. Minato decided that he had enough seals on the boy to suppress him from doing anything that a toddler could do, so he made the choice to have him live under the same roof as them. A paternity test would take about 3 days to see if Naruto was truly his and Kushina's son, so where else to have the powerful nin but at the residence of the Hokage himself. If he or Kushina weren't there, then Lecky would easily be able to handle the boy in his current state. Besides, the boy didn't show himself to be a threat. He didn't hurt a single person when he was running rampant around Konoha. Even though people were trying to severely injure him, from the reports he didn't harm a single person. Even more so from the memories he had viewed, Naruto wanted nothing more than the safety of the village. But that decided, Minato picked up the boy and slung him over his shoulder. He activated his Hiraishin and transported himself and Naruto to the Namikaze residence. Once they arrived at the manor, he was surprised to see the entire Namikaze family at the dinner table. There, at the table, were his 3 children. The oldest, Lecky, who was 15, was already a jounin and an A-rank ninja. Next to her was her little brother Riku, with his red hair and blue eyes shining brightly at the stranger on his father's shoulder. Riku was 13 and also a jounin. However, due to his prowess in Fuinjutsu and ninjutsu, he was already recognized as a B-rank ninja. Lastly there was Raaza who was 10 and getting ready to enter the ninja academy. Raaza was the spitting image of Kushina and had chakra reserves larger than Kushina did at her age, but had trouble controlling her rather large chakra pool. When everyone saw Naruto hung over Minato's shoulder, there was a mixture of expressions around the table. Kushina had a smile that was starting to split across her face, while Lecky scowled at the blonde. Riku just smiled at the possibility of a new friend, and Raaza's grin was so grand it looked like it was going to split her face. Minato coughed to gain the attention of his family, and when he saw everyone was looking at him he said, "This is Naruto everyone. Now there is something that me and your mother never told you 3. Minato nodded his head to Kushina, indicating that he wanted her to tell everyone the story. Seeing her cue, Kushina rose and said, "Let me first start off by saying that you all have an older brother." At that statement all the children's mouths dropped open. "I can see you all have many questions, but please let me explain before you ask anything. Exactly 18 years to this day I gave birth to a baby boy who we named Naruto. Right after he was born, a horrible man used a jutsu that to this day Minato and I have not seen anything like. The man appeared out of nowhere and took Naruto from the nurse on hand. Just as quickly as he came, he left with our son," Kushina explained as she lowered her head as the painful memory filled her head. Before anyone could say anything, Minato spoke up and said, "I have a strong belief that he is our missing family member and while I run a paternity test, for the next 3 days he will be living here. I doubt he will wake up until the test results come back, seeing as how exhausted his body is. However, if he does wake up, I want everyone here to treat him as any other member of the family." But that said, Minato went to the unused guest bedroom and laid the boy down. "Please let him be our son," Minato thought. Just then, Kushina came to the door and said, "Is he really our Naruto, Minato? Does he know who we are?" Her voice pleading for the answer she wanted. "I am almost certain he is, I just want to make sure," he replied, and with that said Minato pulled out a vial and a swab. Kushina's face dropped because Minato only did things for a reason, and if he wanted to test if they truly were the boy's parents, then that meant they might not be. Putting her feelings aside for the moment, she nodded and opened her mouth to let Minato get a swab. Once he got the swab he put it into the vial and used his Hiraishin. He appeared in the hospital where he asked for Tsunade, one of the legendary Sannin. 2.5 days later, life in the Namikaze household continued regularly for the next 3 days. Lecky rarely left the house, always keeping an eye on the sleeping blonde, believing he was a threat. Whenever Lecky did leave, Raaza would race to Naruto's room and start telling him stories of what she did for the day. Riku lost interest after the first day, seeing as how Naruto wasn't going to wake up anytime soon. He lost interest in the possibility of making a new friend until he woke up. Kushina would fret over the boy, constantly checking his vitals and his temperature. She was trying to baby an 18-year-old boy, which Minato thought was slightly amusing. Around midnight on the second day, Naruto was asleep but started to stir. When he opened his eyes he was surprised to see he was in his room at his old apartment in Konoha. He was confused at first because there was none of the furniture that he used to have in his room. The first thing he realized was that he was starving and frankly quite parched. Putting all the thoughts that started to fill his mind aside, Naruto tried to get up. He was more than surprised when he face planted onto the ground. Leaving his thoughts that he must have been injured badly, he started to get up. He used the wall as a support as he limped into the kitchen. To his surprise, again none of the furniture was the same. Dismissing everything, he prayed that there would be a cup of instant ramen in the cabinets. Naruto's prayers were answered as he found a cup near the back. Slightly appalled by the numerous healthy foods in the cabinet, he wobbled over to the sink. He turned on the faucet and started to drink water from the tap. After about a minute of almost chugging water, he grabbed the cup and filled it again. He placed the ramen in the microwave and eagerly watched as the cup spun around and around. Naruto started to drool, and when the microwave dinged it sounded like pure bliss to his ears. Getting excited, Naruto forgot about the condition his body was in, and on his way to the table he fell, spilling all the contents of his cup. He was about to cry when the light in the hallway came on. Naruto instantly became afraid. No one had come into his apartment since he was 8. When he was 8 and just moved into the apartment, a group of villagers broke in to senselessly beat him, telling him to leave and move somewhere else. Naruto called out who was there, and his fear only intensified as the pair of feet came barreling towards him. Right when the figure came into view, Naruto's eyes widened as he remembered the events of the past few days. "Mamamum?" Naruto asked, his eyes beginning to wet. "Naruto? What's wrong, are you okay?" she asked, hearing but not seeing him. Naruto, seeing Kushina search the area for him, said, "Down here, I'm sorry, I kind of fell and made a mess." Kushina's face looked devastated seeing him on the ground with a cup of hot ramen hitting his arm. She rushed over and put his arm under the sink, seeing slight burn marks on him. "Why didn't you call for help when you fell?" Kushina half asked and half yelled. "Sorry, I didn't know that you and Dad would be living in my apartment. Besides, the last time someone was in here without my permission, they beat me senseless," Naruto said a little sheepishly. Kushina looked horrified and confused by Naruto's words. She finished cleaning his arm and sat him at the table. "Stay right here, I'm going to make you some chicken soup. Nothing is better when you're sick or not feeling well," she said. With that, she walked over to the kitchen and started to boil a pot of water. She then started to fetch various things in the kitchen for the soup. As she was busily working, she asked Naruto, "What do you mean your apartment and beaten senselessly?" Kushina tentatively asked. Naruto shrugged as he thought, might as well tell her about my life and how I got here. But then Naruto started telling Kushina of what happened after he was kidnapped from this world. He spared no detail as he freely explained how he had a second Kyuubi sealed inside him, along with how he was treated as a child and how much he wanted his parents. He went through major events in his life that he thought she would like to hear. After about 20 minutes, he finished with saying, "I'm glad for what has happened to me. It made me who I am today, besides I now have a chance to live and learn from my parents. I'm not sure what I'm going to do now, maybe I will start with seeing old friends. But then again I don't know if I can call them that seeing as no one knows who I am," Naruto said as his smile turned to a slight frown. When Kushina stopped stirring the soup, she filled a bowl, and as she turned around to give it to Naruto, she walked over with tears running down her face and had more than wet portions on her green nightgown. Naruto, realizing what he just told his mother, started, with a small smile, "I'm sorry mom, I didn't mean to make you cry, I just thought I should tell you about myself," as tears started to hit his eyes from seeing his mother cry. Kushina shook her head and set the bowl in front of Naruto. She then bent down and kissed his forehead. When she pulled away she looked him in the eyes and said, "Don't apologize about a thing. Now that we have found you after all these years, you will never be alone again. I am sorry about what happened in your childhood. It is because of me and Minato not being careful enough during your birth that we lost you," Kushina said as she wiped the tears from her face. "So why are you here at my place?" Naruto asked as he brought the spoon to his lips, only to have him drop it back into the bowl. Kushina was about to answer when she saw Naruto drop the spoon. Kushina suspected it to be the restricting seals placed on him. Wordlessly, Kushina grabbed his spoon and filled it with soup. She then blew on it before she offered it to Naruto. He opened his mouth and his taste buds were sent to heaven. After about 2 or 3 more spoonfuls, Naruto started to cry. Kushina noticed this when a tear hit his soup and she put the spoon down and started to rub his back asking, "What's wrong?" Naruto responded by saying, "Nothing. This is all I have ever wanted and it's much better than I ever imagined. Not only that, the food is delicious. I honestly don't know why I thought instant ramen was the best food ever," and for the first time in years, Naruto let himself cry. Kushina, understanding, just continued to feed him. After about 5 minutes or so a new pair of footsteps could be heard coming down the hall. Luckily for Naruto, he finished the soup and his crying spell before the new person arrived. When Naruto saw it was none other than Raaza, his eyes went a little wide. "I have siblings," Naruto asked and stated at the same time. Kushina blushed a little bit, realizing that she knew what the majority of Naruto's life was like, but he knew nothing of the life here in this world. Kushina smiled as she looked at Naruto and said, "This is your youngest sister Raaza. I know you already met her and Lecky too, but you have a younger brother also. His name is Riku, and I'm sure everyone cannot wait to get to know you," and then she smiled between Naruto and Raaza. Naruto looked at Raaza and said, "Looks like you're stuck with me, squirt." To Kushina's surprise, Raaza didn't explode at being called a squirt but smiled and said, "I'm so happy you are my real Ani-chan Naruto." With that signature trill of hers. Naruto's heart was melted by this little girl and he thought, it doesn't matter if no one in this world knows me. Even if I have to start all over forming new bonds with my old friends, having my family will make it more than worth it. Just then, there was a knock on the door. Instinctively Naruto started to head to it. But, to his surprise, he felt a hand on his shoulder indicating him to sit down. He looked at his mother as she stood up and walked over to the door. When she opened it, Naruto saw someone that made him stand up and stumble to the door. It was none other than Tsunade, standing in her usual green attire. When Naruto reached the door, he hugged Tsunade and said, "Tsunade Bachan. I never thought I would see you again." Her head created a tick mark as she hit the boy on the top of his head, hard enough to make a knot. "Bachan, how old do you think I am, brat?" Tsunade snapped. Naruto frowned and looked at her when he realized that this wasn't his Bachan, but it's Tsunade who had no memories of him. "Sorry, I forgot you wouldn't know who I am," Naruto said in a hushed voice. Tsunade didn't hear what Naruto said and stated, "What was that?" "Didn't hear you, maybe you should speak up, brat," she said with an angry tone. To everyone's surprise, Naruto said what he just said, but loud enough to wake up the rest of the Namikazes. Tsunade just froze at first. Anyone who knew her like the boy claimed knew not talk to her in such a way. Normally, Tsunade would then proceed to beat the living crap out of whoever raised their voice to her, but she just stood there frozen with her mouth open. She couldn't believe that anyone would talk to her in such a way. Right when Tsunade was about to retort, she saw Minato coming from the residence along with the rest of the Namikaze family. He walked up and said, now it's pretty late to start a fight. Tsunade, I'm pretty sure to come here this late. The results to the test I ask you run are done, he said with a smile, to hide his nervousness. Tsunade merely nodded and came inside when Minato gestured her to. She sat down at the table with everyone else. She cleared her throat to give herself some time to let the rage that was building up to subside. After a slight pause she said, the test was a positive for both parent samples for the child's. Whoever doubted that the child was theirs can rest assured because he is in fact the child of the two parents. Everyone in the room started to cheer, much to Tsunade's and Naruto's surprise. Who was the test for? Naruto and Tsunade asked at the same time, which led them to glare at each other. For you. We wanted to make sure that it was truly you, Naruto. Seeing as how it is, I would personally like to welcome you to the Namikaze family. He cheered as the rest of his family did as well. Naruto said, of course it's me. What kind of idiot would impersonate the child of a cage? He retorted in annoyance. Tsunade on the other hand just stared slack-jawed at learning that the Namikazes had not only a new addition, but one who was a young adult. Questions wanted to be asked and things to be revealed, but it was late and the Namikazes wanted to go back to bed. Minato shooed Tsunade out, saying that there would be an official announcement tomorrow about what she just learned. With that said, for the first time ever, the entire Namikaze family went to bed under the same roof. Chapter 5. As the sun's rays began to fill Naruto's room he began to stir. In a very groggy fashion Naruto pulled his covers off while stretching his muscles. During his stretch there wasn't the normal satisfying feeling of doing so. Curious he tried flexing his muscles only to have the feeling that he wasn't able to. Deciding to put the matter aside for the moment he began looking around his room when he realized a few differences. First his bed had different sheets along with a completely different set of furniture in his room. This is unmistakably my room, but none of the things in here are mine he thought with a perplexed look on his face. When he decided to get up he swung his legs over the side of the bed. Again there was the sensation that something was wrong. When he tried to stand up he was met with wobbly legs barely able to hold his weight. My body is acting like I spend the whole day training, but I feel completely fine Naruto thought. Just then he remembered that he was feeling the same way the night before last night Naruto thought when a mixture of emotions ran through his body. Oka-san and Odo-san are alive. Not only that but I have a brother and a sisters. But, are they really my family? I come from a whole different world, can they truly be my family? Naruto began thinking how he didn't belong here. He didn't deserve to have his parents alive because they died protecting him. I have to return to my world. Everyone needs me. Without me there isn't any hope for the war Naruto thought as his mood began to darken after finally accepting the reality he was in. Kid, you shouldn't feel like this. I don't really know what to say right now, but this is your home. This is your world. The beta world wasn't even supposed to exist in the first place. Obito simply brought it into existence through that accursed eye of his. You may seek to return, but this is your world. This is where you belong, Kurama said, trailing off in a tone of kinship, something the fox never used before. Do you really think it is okay to stay here? It is not a matter of right or wrong, kid. The answer is simple. This is your world, here is where you are supposed to live. You might consider staying here the right thing to do some days, while others you might believe returning home is the best choice. However, this is where you are from, so you should never leave. As wise words were once told to me, living is not simply existing, but finding a place where you belong, Kurama said with a small hum in his throat. Who told you that? Naruto inquired. A sage of 6 paths, Kurama said with a seldom tone. Naruto became quiet and Kurama took that as his time to take his leave. Naruto slowly began to smile. That smile turned into a full grin and he muttered, I have a family. Naruto didn't waste any more time. He threw the pajamas that he was wearing off and walked over to the closet. Opening it, he was slightly stunned. There were so many different types of clothes. Naruto thought to his old closet, which was only half full, with the majority of clothing being ninja gear. He scanned until he found an orange shirt which was almost a perfect fit. He then found black pants that were similar to his old ninja clothes. Satisfied, he dressed himself and walked to his door. While opening the door, the feeling that his body wasn't responding correctly began to surface again. Curious, he thought something must be different in this world. I don't feel quite the same. When he opened the door, he was more than surprised to hear a sizzling sound that was followed by a smell that caused his mouth to water. Instinctively, he walked down the hall to the kitchen to inspect it when he was greeted by the stare of his parents and siblings. Good morning, Kushina said, who stood in front of the stove cooking something that caused his mouth to water. Good morning, Naruto said while a sense of anxiety filled him. This was the first time he woke up to someone in his home. Instinctively, Naruto began to walk over the cabinet where he found the instant ramen last night. When he opened it, he was promptly asked by Kushina, Naruto, what are you doing? Eating breakfast, he said flatly as he pulled an instant ramen from the back of the shelf. The tick mark formed on Kushina's forehead and when Naruto looked at her with a puzzled expression, she asked what? With an edge of annoyance in her voice. You're blocking the microwave, Naruto said flatly. To his surprise, instead of moving, Kushina raised her arm and then proceeded to make a fist which she brought down upon his head. Ouch. What was that for? Naruto screamed. For a second, fear for the first time in years found its way into Naruto's heart. Above his crouched position from cradling his head stood Kushina, whose hair seemed to come alive, which moved in all directions. Her face was covered in a blanket of rage. When a loving mother cooks you a meal, you eat it, she said while a small amount of killing intent began to build around her. To her surprise, Naruto looked puzzled at first. Then he said, you mean that delicious smell that you're cooking is for me? He asked, his tone full of innocence. At first, Kushina was slightly taken aback from what Naruto said. Slowly her anger died down and she asked, who did you think I was cooking this for? Yourself, of course, Naruto responded. Everyone in the family was looking at Naruto with perplexed faces, even Minato was slightly taken aback. Naruto was curious why everyone was staring at him and he asked, did I do something weird? To his surprise, Leki was the one to speak and she said, haven't you ever had someone make food for you, moron? Naruto froze, realizing that normally parents would make food for their kids. Oh sorry, it's just I never had someone cook me breakfast before. I've lived by myself since I was 6, so I don't really know how to interact with a family. I'll try not to do anything so stupid from now on, he said, sounding as if he was disappointed in himself. Leki still didn't really trust her elder brother who was thrown into her life. However, every time she was around him she could only feel a bond forming to her irritation. With Naruto's words, Kushina and Minato felt a pain from not being in Naruto's life. Minato thought, I haven't explained anything to the family and saying where he really came from might be a bit too much. Minato resigned himself and said, Naruto, make yourself a plate and come here, as he beckoned down a hallway. Curious, Naruto filled a plate to the brim with the various foods his mother made for breakfast. Following his father while he was nearly inhaling the food as he walked down the hallway. Minato stopped in front of a door that seemed to carry a strange aura around it. When Naruto squinted at the door, he could see a variety of seals engraved in the door with such precision and complexity that he wasn't even sure if a human could make such an intricate contraption. Minato noticed Naruto staring at the door that took him more than enough time to construct. The door led to not only his personal office, but a safe house if his family needed somewhere safe to stay. He constructed the room with enough barriers and seals that only Kushina and those blood related to him would be able to enter. It had enough defensive capabilities to defend against the strongest shinobis. In fact, he personally believed that only a cage would be able to break the barriers around the room. After getting out of his own sidetrack, Minato noticed a small frown forming on his son's face. Curious, he asked, what's wrong? There isn't an imperfection in my seals, is there? Naruto's face furrowed even more and he asked, why the heck are you asking me in a flat tone? Minato put on a small smile to hide the bit of annoyance in his face and he asked Naruto, you are the child of two of the greatest sealing masters of this time. Riku is nearly a sealing master and Leki is showing great promise not being too far behind. Being our child, it is almost a requirement to be a master Fuinjutsu, Minato said in a matter-of-fact tone. Naruto gave his father an skeptical look before he said, Iro-sennin tried to teach me the stuff, but I found it much less useful than ninjutsu, so he gave up trying to teach me, said Naruto. Iro-sennin? Minato questioned. You know that pervy old sage Jiraiya? He was my sensei, Naruto said, a voice full of something Minato would describe as sorrow. You seem complacent to talk about Jiraiya. Did something happen between you two in your world? Minato trailed off as he made a small curse under his breath. I brought you here so we could talk in private in this room, so let's go in before we say anything else, said Minato. Okay, but by any chance could I go get more food before we start? Naruto asked. Minato looked at Naruto with a dumbfounded face and then started to laugh. You really are an interesting boy, go ahead and take all the food you want. Naruto formed a huge smile and then ran back into the kitchen to have the surprised stares from his family. Silently he piled more food onto his plate, much to his mother's surprise. Normally people hated my cooking, but he can't seem to get enough of it, Kushina thought. Once Naruto was satisfied with the amount of food on his plate, which by the way was the remaining food left, he smiled and said thanks for the food before going back down the hallway to Minato's office. When he returned, Minato signed at the quantity of food Naruto had. He put his hand to where the door handle should have been. Naruto's eyes widened when a variety of characters began to swirl around Minato's hand. When the characters stopped swirling around, a small flash of light formed under Minato's hand. A clicking sound was heard and then the door popped open. Naruto was memorized by the seal that the door had. Once they were in the room, Minato closed the door and for a second the two were plunged into complete darkness. Almost instantly the room was filled with light from a floating white orb in the center of the room. Naruto was about to ask when Minato said, the light is from an Uchiha friend. It's called Eternal Flame Jutsu. The white fire that always burns but doesn't burn anything, Minato said, already answering the first question Naruto was going to ask. The room seemed like a regular office with notes and filing cabinets taking up the majority of the room. There was a desk strewn with notes along with a table to the side that Naruto guessed was used to put food and drinks for long hours cached into the room. After Naruto fully took in the room, he sat down in a chair opposite to Minato so that the two would face each other. Now since you have more than plenty of food, I want to ask you a lot of questions. Go ahead and eat. Will you do just nod for a yes or no to answer my questions, Minato said. Naruto looked up at his father and simply nodded while he was trying to swallow food with his more than stuffed mouth. First question. When I entered your mindscape, I came across an existence that said it was the Kyuubi. Do you really have the Kyuubi inside your body who isn't even sealed? Minato asked. Let me explain some things to Minato for you, alright? Kurama said. Sure, go ahead and take control, then Naruto replied while he placed his plate on a table by where the two were seated. Curious by the Naruto's actions, Minato was about to question his movements when suddenly his presence and everything about him seemed to change. The type and flow of chakra in his body even changed. Without even hesitating, Minato used one arm to flip himself across the table behind Naruto while he used his other arm to pull out a kunai to Naruto's neck. Son or not, he could still be a threat to our family and village. He shouldn't be able to change his chakra movement at all with the seals still on him, Minato thought. Quite jumpy, aren't you, fourth Hokage? Kurama said. Minato froze at Naruto's words, which sounded like a demon was speaking from his mouth. Kurama turned his head so Minato could look at Naruto's face. Naruto's eyes had turned red with slits for his pupils, along with his whisker marks getting longer and darker. Kyuubi, Minato breathed, not sure how to react at all. Before you go and try to kill me, let me say some things. Yes, there is no seal in the kid anymore and there is nothing stopping me from leaving his body but the kid himself. However, I am choosing to stay for my own reasons. Lastly, my name is Kurama, not the filthy name Kyuubi that humans call me, Kurama said, using the tone to which he believed he was superior to all those around him. Minato began to relax his more than rigid muscles but still held the kunai to Naruto's throat just in case. First, everything I showed you while in the mindscape is true. That was the kid's memories. Second, the reason I was dragged into this world instead of staying in my own is because I am not the full existence of the nine-tailed fox. There can only ever be one of something in world. With two of the same in a world, a paradox would form, or an existence would simply absorb the other. However, I am not the full nine-tailed fox but the yang chakra of the original. I am not complete here in this world but an existence of my own. This leads me to a point that I can absorb the fox inside Kushina with Naruto's help. It will be completely safe without hurting Kushina or the fox, Kurama said, after explaining the majority of the questions Minato had wanted to ask. Minato was quite for a minute or so mulling over what Kurama had said to him that he didn't even notice the change in Naruto's chakra. Minato was only brought back to his senses when Naruto said, could you move your kunai, it's making me a little nervous with a little chuckle. Sorry Naruto. You just startled me when your chakra system changed. You shouldn't be able to do that with the seals I placed on you, Minato said with his voice having a small amount of sympathy in it. It's fine, I know me being here must be setting the whole family on edge, Naruto said with a small amount of depression. No, in fact it's having the opposite effect. I haven't seen Kushina happier since when Raaza was born. Riku has been ecstatic and been looking forward to a sparring match with you. Lecky is really similar to me. Sometimes the two of us can be a little too calculating and cold, but trust me when I say we do love you very much. We just want to make sure you love us as much as we do before we will be at ease around you, Minato said in a tone that only a father could use with his son. Well anyway, let's move on to some other things, those being your integration into this world, Minato said while striding up and returning to his seat in front of Naruto. First, there are many differences in this world. I can't recall everything that has happened, but I took note of all the major differences. Trying to be as organized as possible, I will go in chronological order. First, there was never an Uchiha massacre. There was a small uprising at one point, but with the help of Itachi, the small group of insurgents was swiftly dealt with. The group known as Akatsuki was never corrupted by Obito, along with the Uchiha clan here in this world. The group Akatsuki contains 3 main members that rule the land of rain, all taught by Jiraiya. Third, peace between the lands have never been as strong. Almost all nations have peace between one another. Fourth, Orochimaru has not betrayed the Leaf Village. I believed he became corrupted when the third took office, instead of giving him the title of Hokage. At first he disapproved of me, but eventually he came around. Currently the 3 Sanin all live in the Leaf who took an in under their belt to train for 3 years. You already seem to know 2 very well. The first is Sasuke Uchiha trained by Orochimaru, second is Sakura Haruno trained by Tsunade. Lastly is Lecky who was trained by Jiraiya. Your old team and your world, Team 7 has a lot of similarities. Lecky graduated from the academy much earlier than most, so she managed to take your spot on your old team. Now I know that was a lot of information and a lot to take in, but did you get it all? Minato inquired. Yeah, I got it all. I do have a couple of questions to ask of my own, though, Naruto said, and then immediately went to ask what was on his mind. First is, what do you mean integration into this world? I got everything you said, took it to memory, but I don't really understand what you mean by that. Well, telling everyone you are our kidnapped son from another universe might unsettle people, wouldn't you agree? Minato asked. Yes, I suppose that would be true, but what do you have in mind then? Naruto asked. A story, in fact I had spent the past couple of days creating one in case you really were our missing child. Now I know that you know nearly everyone here in the village, but no one here knows you. I plan to reveal to the village later today that you are my son. The story we will use similar to what really happened. We will say you were kidnapped at your birth just like it really happened, but instead of saying you were stolen to another dimension, we will say you were taken to lands due the east past the village of Mist. There you were raised in a village as one of its own until your 17th birthday where you found the truth about your life. After about a year of planning you made your escape back to the Leaf with us here today. This will be the story we will use, are you okay with it? Minato asked after sighing. I am fine with it, but is it really okay to lie to everyone? I mean, I know Senjutsu along with being able to control Biju chakra. My main jutsus are all leaf-based, being the Rasengan and Shadow Clone Jutsu, Naruto stated. Knowing the lie would be hard to keep up. Well, it would be strange, but mostly everyone will dismiss it. Those that won't will be the elders who will be informed the truth at a meeting before your announcement. However, this brings up a good point. Many people were saying that you used a never-before-seen chakra release with unimaginable power. I am quite skeptical of this, can you tell me what it is? Minato asked, not sure how else to ask it. Well, you see, I call it silver release. The reason is simple, because it turns my chakra silver. It turns silver simply because of the combination of my chakra colors. Blue from my chakra, white from natural chakra, and black from Kurama's chakra. Currently I can only maintain the mode for around 10 seconds because the mix of natural and tailed beast chakra is so dense that it nearly crushes my body. To prevent that I have to use my own chakra to support the system of the mixture. When I enter the mode I have about enough power to triple the damage of a beast bomb. In fact, when I was texting it out in my old world, a silver release Rasengan made a crater about the size and a half of Konoha. I can only image what a Rasen Shuriken would do, Naruto said as he finished his explanation. Wait, really? Your silver release has that much power? Another thing, what is a Rasen Shuriken? Minato inquired. Well, it is extremely powerful, but like I said, I can only maintain it for 10 seconds as of now, and it completely fries my chakra system. As to what a Rasen Shuriken is, let's see, give me a second to remember. Oh yeah, Jiraiya said it's elemental manipulation with the Rasengan. He said you were working on creating something similar, Naruto said. At that, Minato's eyes began to widen. He had tried years to add elemental chakra to his Rasengan, but never was able to. He gave up eventually, believing it was almost impossible. Minato had always been proud of his children who had accomplished so much in the short amount of time they had, but hearing what his eldest son was telling him, a new sense of pride struck him. Never before had Minato believed himself to be outclassed, but at the movement, if everything that his son was telling him was true, he felt he would barely be able to match him without using Senjutsu, which he mastered a little after Leki was born. Minato could barely hold his curiosity for his son's abilities. He stood up and asked, "Do you mind demonstrating some of these abilities for me?" Minato asked, not even trying to conceal the enthusiasm in his voice. "Sure. I would love to," Naruto said with a huge smile coming across his face. But that Minato stood up and mentioned for Naruto to follow. At the door, the same mystical process happened while Naruto waited for it to open. He thought, "I got it to learn Fuinjutsu." When they came into the hallway, Riku was lounging on a couch with Raaza, while the two seemed bored out of their minds. Minato seemed slightly annoyed by how lazy two of his kids were being. "Riku, I'm sure you could be spending your time better by taking on a mission in Raaza. You need to practice your chakra control so you can graduate from the academy," Minato said with a sharp tone in his voice. Raaza snapped to attention and grabbed a bag that Naruto assumed was her nin gear and ran out the door. Riku lazily got up, and when he turned around and saw Naruto, his face lit up into a huge smile. "Hey dad, can I train with Naruto today?" Riku asked ecstatically. "No, he has a busy day with a lot of things to do. Maybe tomorrow if he has some free time," Minato said. But that said, Riku began a slow sulk out of the house. Minato said, "Sometimes I worry about how lazy that boy is." Naruto responded by saying, "Well, one of the smartest people I know is way lazier than him, and besides, you said he was a master of Fuinjutsu, that's good, right?" Minato sighed at Naruto's observation of Fuinjutsu. Naruto, Fuinjutsu is just as powerful as ninjutsu, taijutsu, or jinjutsu. However, a bonus for Fuinjutsu is that very few know it and can use it in battle. Now imagine if you were the only ninja in all the land that had wind affinity. Think of all the advantages you could have against opponents who know nothing about it. Not only is it a viable source of combat, but it can be a lot more affecting seeing as how every nin does not know anything about it," Minato said, resigning himself. Naruto gave a look of consideration before saying, "You know, I never really thought of it that way. Maybe learning it wouldn't be so bad after all." "How long does it take to learn?" "Years. Riku is the youngest shinobi I know of to be considered a master of Fuinjutsu," Minato said, feeling aghast that his eldest son wanted to learn such a complex shinobi art at such a late age. "Huh, really? I bet I could learn it in a month," Naruto said with the utmost confidence. "Oh really? Wanna make a bet out of it?" Minato said in a slight tone. "Sure, what's the bet?" Naruto asked eagerly. "If I win, you have to teach me elemental manipulation." "Seeing as how it's impossible for you to win, I'll teach you the Hiraishin," Minato said, while being sure to sound as if he is mocking Naruto. Naruto, slightly annoyed by the way his father was talking to him, said, "Let's hurry and go to a training ground so I can show you some techniques. Besides, I already know I'm going to win, and since I am such a good son, I'll teach you the Rasen Shuriken free of charge." Minato started to laugh from how much confidence his son had at such an unfeasible task. While trying to stifle his onslaught of laughter, he grabbed Naruto and used his Hiraishin to teleport them to one of the training grounds. Naruto blinked at seeing as how they were at the training grounds before blurting out, "How the hell did we get here?" "I used my Hiraishin, of course, how else?" Minato replied. Naruto remained speechless before saying, "I'm going to go into Sage mode, okay?" Before Naruto could start to gather natural chakra, Minato hit him on the backside of his head. "Oh, what was that for?" Naruto yelled. "Remember the story you are supposed to stick to. You're not supposed to be able to know Senjutsu." Simply blurting that out loud for the world to hear isn't that smart. "Also, you still have some seals on you that I need to remove." Naruto was about to retort but realized he was really the one who made a mistake and said sorry. "Well, why did you bring me out here if you didn't want me to show you?" "You can once I put up a barrier or two up," Minato said, and with that he pulled out 3 scrolls. Minato set the 3 scrolls down on top of each other and started to make various hand signs. When he finished, a purple barrier began to form around the entire training ground. Once the barrier was completely set, Naruto said, "Alright, what do you want me to show you?" 3 hours later, Minato broke the barrier and looked at his son. He had shown him nearly every jutsu he had under his belt, along with showing him Sage mode and Bijuu mode. Little could be said about what he saw, so he simply said he was impressed. What impressed him the most though was Naruto's stamina. After 3 hours of using all A-class jutsus or higher, Naruto only has used 1 to 2 drops of sweat during the 3-hour demonstration. Looking around Minato, such total destruction of the training ground. Realizing that he would have to put out a D-ranked mission to repair the grounds brought a slight sense of annoyance. Dismissing it though, he looked at the sun and realized it was around noon. Naruto would be reveled to the village around 5, and his meeting with the clan heads was at 1. He realized his time was almost up with his son. "Hey Naruto, I have to attend some meetings soon. Do you know the way back home?" Minato asked. "Yeah, I'll be fine, besides I want to see how different the village is in this world," Naruto said, putting on a small smile. When Naruto began making his way through the village, he was getting a lot of looks. He wasn't sure if they recognized him from the incident when half the village was trying to kill him or his similarities with his father. The majority of the village was the same before Pain destroyed it, but there was one section he never noticed before. That being a completely foreign district to him which held the Uchiha crest above it. "This is the Uchiha compound, the one that got destroyed in my time," Naruto thought. Curiosity getting the better of him, he was about to go in when he saw someone he wanted to see so bad. There in front of him leaving the district was no other than his rival, first and best friend, and only person he thought of as his equal. Naruto, thinking with his heart instead of his head, ran forward and put his arm on Sasuke's shoulder. Chapter 6. The second Naruto put his hand on Sasuke's shoulder, everything seemed to slow down. Adrenaline was coursing through his body while all of his senses focused solely on Sasuke. Slowly all of Naruto's surrounding began to blur, while Sasuke slowly started to turn. Naruto began to hold his breath and was attentively watching every move Sasuke made down to the individual muscles. When Sasuke finished turning around, all he could do was look at the strange boy firmly grasping his shoulder. The look in the blonde's eyes was one he never saw before. With a curious expression, Sasuke asked, "You alright? You look like you just saw a ghost." Naruto saw Sasuke's lips moving but didn't hear what he said. All he could do was look into his eyes. The eyes of Sasuke were those that were always full with hatred and contempt. No matter how much Naruto scrutinized Sasuke, he could find no resemblance of the boy he once knew. Physically he was indistinguishable, but from one look, the body language spoke for itself. This was not the Sasuke he knew, but one that knew the love of family and friends and cherished it above all else. Sasuke began to tense a little bit from how intently the blonde was fixated on him. Right when he was about to shrug the blonde off, he loosed his grip and all of his features relaxed. "Sorry about that. I just ended up moving to this village and you look a lot like someone that I knew," Naruto said. Sasuke was more than puzzled how the blonde face went from one full of emotions to a mask that covered everything, but decided to just put it beyond him. He just returned from a 3-day mission and wanted nothing more than to see his parents and siblings. So with it he turned around, dismissing the blonde as he continued to the Uchiha compound. Naruto could just stand there. A solitary man in the mix of busy villagers. Right before he could delve deep into his subconscious, he felt a flick on his forehead. The flick was enough to bring him back to reality to see the anxious face of Lecky. "You okay, Naruto? You seemed like you knew Sasuke," Lecky inquired. "No. He just looked like someone I knew," he said somewhat wistfully. "It must be hard," Lecky said. "What is?" Naruto asked. "Moving here to a new village surrounded by strangers. Hell, it must be harder with the way me and Otu-san have been treating you," Lecky said with a downcast face. Naruto laughed a little bit and waved his arm dismissively. "Don't worry about it. It's fine, I really don't mind. I was just shocked when I saw Mom that I ended up running rampant throughout the village." "Stop that, I hate it," Lecky said. "Stop what?" Naruto asked with the small smile he had dropping. "Stop acting like what's happening doesn't hurt. I don't understand you at all. You forgive people no matter what they do to you. You have more strength than anyone I know, but all you do is brush it off and act like an idiot," she snapped. Gaining more than a few looks from people around her. "You hungry?" Naruto asked quickly. Wa was as far as she got before Naruto grabbed her arm and started dragging her through the village. Lecky, more than speechless, just let herself be dragged through the village by her elder sibling. Eventually they stopped in front of a small ramen shop called Ramen Ichiraku. When they arrived, Lecky pulled her arm away from Naruto and said, "I'm not hungry. Sorry. I just wanted to talk to you somewhere a little more private," Naruto replied sheepishly. Lecky still didn't really trust him but decided to enter the fray. She sat down and ordered something. Naruto followed suit and they both dug in. They both ate the ramen furiously, and when she finished she turned to see Naruto looking at her with one of the widest grins from him to date. "I'm so relieved you like ramen. It's one of my favorite foods to eat," he said offhandedly. "So? You said you will talk, so talk." "I want an answer," Lecky affirmed, getting straight to the point. Lecky noticed Naruto closing his eyes, going into a deep thought. He was quiet for a moment before he said, "Are you sure you want to know everything?" "Positive." "Well, let's start out where it all began. When I was growing up in my village I was ostracized. From my earliest memories I can remember being looked at like I was nothing more than a demon or nuisance. When the time came that I could walk and talk, the orphanage I was staying at kicked me out. From an early age of 6 I was living alone and was forced to fend for myself. I probably wouldn't have survived if not for the village elder occasionally checking up on me. Since I was always alone I began to crave attention. I remember pulling pranks almost daily because when people would scold me it gave me a sense of humanity. With me giving people a reason to hate me, it didn't hurt as much when they looked at me like I was a demon. Anyway, I never had any friends growing up. It's not like I didn't get along with other kids, it's just that when I did the parents would make sure to keep their kid from me. When I was assigned a team I made my first friends. After a little bit of time I began to prove myself to them. Very slowly I began to be accepted for the accomplishments I made. After years I began to gain the trust of those around me until I was able to prove myself and become acknowledged by my entire village. The reason I accept anyone is because no one is perfect. Everyone has good and evil inside of them. Most of the friends that I have made hated me once, so I try to give people as many chances as I can. I'm sorry if I don't act like things hurt, they do, but most of the time it just feels numb. As for me being an idiot, I don't know what you want me to say, I'm sorry. But all of that said, Lecky could do nothing but stare at her elder brother. She always thought it was hard for her to grow up. She was the daughter of the Hokage who had to perfect. All of her teachers and educators pressed her to her limits. When the time came that her siblings entered the world, she could do nothing more than train. The attention of her parents were always hard to attain, with them being busy with her siblings or village business. With her being the eldest, she had to be the strongest to set an example and help protect the family. I thought that I had the worst possible childhood. Forced into a position that I didn't resent but also didn't ask for. I have always been pushed by others, but Naruto did nothing but push himself. I had all of the support I ever needed, but he had none. How could I have been treating him the way that I have? Lecky thought as a tear began to roll down her face. Naruto saw the tear and gently grabbed her head and pulled it close to his chest. He let her sniffle and cry a bit before saying, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you cry. Finding out that Otu-san and Aka-san were not only alive but had more kids has been one of the happiest things I ever found out. I know that right now I'm nothing more to the family than blood, but I want to be a part of it. I want to protect you, love you, and care for you. I want to be part of this family, so let's not try to rush things and get to genuinely know each other, Naruto said soothingly. Lecky pushed off Naruto's chest and looked at him. Lecky had only seen Naruto for a day or two, but she knew that he already had a place in her heart. Her body reacted on impulse and without even thinking Lecky said I love you. When she did, Naruto's eyes widened a little but then relaxed. A small smile played on his lips until he said I love you too. With all that said and done, Naruto left money on the counter and the two got up and started walking. They continued to discuss things on the walk back home to get to know each other a little bit more. When they arrived home, Lecky was telling Naruto about some of the family vacations that they took yearly. When the two walked into the living room, they could see Kushina in the kitchen making sandwiches. When she looked to see the two bonding, a small part of her heart fluttered at seeing how well the two seemed to be getting along. Can I make you a sandwich for lunch? Kushina asked. When Naruto looked to see Kushina, there was the small shock that passed over his face anytime he saw her. She assumed it would take Naruto a little bit of time to adjust until he was able to look at her and Minato without a hurricane of emotions trying free themselves. Yay, that sounds great, Aka-san. Can you make my favorite? Lecky simply added. Sure, and would you like anything, Naruto? Kushina asked sweetly. Naruto was just staring at her, trying to think of what to say. He never really did make many sandwiches. The effort of buying various products to make them was always more trouble to him than it was worth. He was racking his brain to think of something to say other than ramen when Kushina interrupted his thoughts. Why don't I just make you your Otu-san's favorite? Kushina inquired as if she read Naruto's mind. Sure, that sounds great. But that said, Lecky and Naruto continued their small talk as Kushina went about making her two eldest children lunch. Like any mother, she was intently listening to what her children were saying, but acted as if she paid them no attention. Once she finished, she brought the two their food and sat at the table with them sipping a cup of tea. She pulled out a book and began to read it while shooting the occasional glance at Naruto to see if he liked the sandwich. Naruto took one bite and stopped. He chewed once and Kushina could barely tell what he was thinking. Before she could ask if he didn't like it, he nearly shoved the entire sandwich into his mouth and began to chew it. Once he was able to swallow, he reached for the glass of water Kushina provided him with and said thank you so much for the meal. That was the best sandwich I ever ate. Kushina could do nothing more but let a smile form on her face. She never was thanked as much for her food by anyone other than Naruto. Lecky finished her sandwich and said, you can't keep thanking Aka-san and Otu-san every time they do something for you. You look like an idiot, Lecky mused. Kushina shot her a look but understood what Lecky was trying to say. She is right, Naruto. Here we're family, and while a thank you is always pleasant to hear, it's not necessary to give, Kushina lectured. Naruto sighed and said, right, I understand, just give me a little bit of time and I'm sure I won't stick out as much. After a couple more minutes of small talk between the two, Lecky stood up and said, sorry, but I have to go. My two teammates are home and the three of us are rarely in the village at the same time. Lecky said and saw a small flicker of emotions pass across Naruto's face, but decided it would be better to ask him about it later. A few moments after Lecky left, Kushina closed her book and looked at Naruto. Do you have any plans for today other than the meeting at 5? Kushina asked. No, he replied. Well, then I know what we can do for the rest of the day until 5, Kushina said as if she was thrilled. Naruto looked at her and raised an eyebrow from Kasina's sudden enthusiasm. We can go shopping for you. We always bought clothes for how big we thought you would be at the time, but now that you're here, I'm sure you would like to get some things that suit your tastes a little bit more, Kushina said enthusiastically as a bright smile lit up her face. Sure, that sound great, Naruto said with an ever-growing fascination at how well his mother seemed to know what he was thinking or wanting for that matter. Kushina grabbed her purse and left a note on the table that said her and Naruto would meet Minato at home around 4. With that they set out. Naruto was always one for practical use, so when Kushina wanted him to get more than shinobi gear, he was forcefully dragged by his mother, muttering things like children should be grateful that their loving parents are willing to go shopping with them for the majority of the beginning of the trip. Kushina was horrified when Naruto wanted to buy shinobi gear with bright orange, but he was adamant when he said he would wear this or nothing when the time came to do missions. She eventually gave in and bought him the shinobi gear he wanted. However, Kushina was winning the war by making Naruto try on a variety of clothes, in which she bought a few she thought looked good on him. As the evening began to wind down, Naruto was carrying a mountain of clothing, forcefully clearing his path as he walked behind his mother in the busy streets. They were headed back home, and Naruto was more than happy to be finished shopping with Kushina. He ended up buying 10 times the amount of clothing he had in his old life. The clothes he was carrying were so heavy that he ended up needing to push some chakra in his muscles so he wouldn't strain himself. Once the two got home, Naruto just threw the clothes on the ground, thinking that he would get to the task of putting them away another time. Kushina walked into his room and said, "Get ready to go to the meeting, we are leaving in 15 minutes, she said in a chastising manner. In fact, why don't you wear these? Kushina said, pulling out a shirt full of fancy designs with a Uzumaki crest on the back along with khaki pants. Naruto knew better by now to argue, so he put on the clothes that his mother gave him. Once he was dressed, he went out into the living room to see the whole family there. The feeling was serene as Naruto looked at his family dressed up. Looking at his parents and siblings, he felt a sense of belonging. Naruto saw Minato do a quiet head check, wordlessly mouthing the name of everyone he passed until he stopped at Naruto. He gave him a big smile and said, "Alright, is everyone ready to go?" Yes, everyone replied simultaneously except for Naruto, who said yes after everyone else did. Lecky looked at him and said idiot while trying to stifling a laugh. But that said, Minato opened the door and one by one the Namikaze family walked out of the door. Kushina come out last, and Minato closed and locked the door as they walked to the main square in the village. As they walked, nearly everyone in the village cleared a path for them, bowing slightly as they walked by. Naruto felt strange because everyone they passed would stare at him. Eventually they came to the center of the village where a stage was set up. Naruto began to follow his sibling to the front of the crowd but was stopped by Minato's hand on his shoulder. "Where do you think you're going?" Minato asked slyly. "You are coming with me on the stage," he said with a smirk. Before Naruto could protest, Minato put his arm across Naruto and led him up to the stage. He stood there and waited for people to stop talking before he began. "Thank you everyone for coming here today. I can see that many of you are curious to who this is next to me. Let me first tell you that yes, he was the shinobi who caused all the alarms to be raised a few days ago." A few murmurs broke out. The name of Minato gestured to Naruto is Naruto Namikaze, but that there was an uproar the second Naruto was introduced to the crowd. Many were whispering, and with all the gossip there was little to no cohesion in what everyone was saying. "Please quiet down," Minato ordered more than requested. After a few minutes and the voices died down, Minato began again. "This here is my son Naruto Namikaze. At first we kept his birth a secret because we didn't want him to be targeted by individuals seeking to harm our family. The day Naruto was born we sent him far to the lands of the east past the village of the mist. There in foreign lands we wanted him to be raised until peace between the villages were restored to ensure his safety. However, during his stay at the village we sent him to, it was raided and its populace killed. Naruto managed to survive and was adopted by a neighboring village without our awareness. There he was raised until he was able to uncover the truth about his past and return home to us. Now that he is back, I would like you all to welcome him home as I and my family have." After the speech there was complete silence as the crowd began to mull over what they were told. Naruto began to have a sense of rejection until he saw a familiar face smile and begin to clap. Sasuke Uchiha was the first to start as the entire village followed in applause. There were many shouts of welcome home and other kind formalities. Naruto's face, which was neutral at first, turned into a grin so big as he began to wave to everyone. Minato began to walk off the stage and gestured for Naruto to follow. As he followed his father, so did his family in tow. Many people, girls especially, tried to talk to Naruto but were silently dissuaded by his family, making a barrier around him. "Why don't we eat out tonight?" Minato suggested. "I had made plans for dinner, but seeing how low likely we are to have villagers outside of our house, eating out sounds wonderful," Kushina offered. "Steakhouse?" Minato asked. "Steakhouse," Kushina confirmed. But that they started walking off to the commercial district of Konoha, with more than a few villagers curious about the new addition to the Namikaze family. After a few minutes Naruto noticed a few familiar figures heading straight towards them. There, walking straight up to Minato was a woman Naruto never saw before, followed by Sasuke, Itachi, and a young girl who looked strikingly similar to the woman. "Good evening, Kushina," said the woman. "Good evening to you as well," Mikoto replied Kushina, shortly followed by her adding, "Would you like to join us for dinner at the steakhouse?" "That sounds lovely," Mikoto said. But that the Uchiha family joined in on the Namikaze circle, with them going to greet Naruto. As they continued to walk, Mikoto came close to Naruto and said, "It's a pleasure to meet you, Naruto. My name is Mikoto, and this here is my eldest son." Itachi gestures to Itachi, "Over here is Sasuke, and lastly this is Kyo." Once Mikoto finished introductions, the group arrived at the steakhouse. When they went inside, they were given a table large enough to accommodate the entire group of 10. The majority of the talk around the table revolved around Naruto, who did his best to answer what he was asked. Eventually the food they ordered came and everyone began to cook their meat. While waiting for the food to cook, Sasuke, who hadn't asked a single question, asked, "Did the village you live at have shinobi rankings?" Yeah," Naruto responded. "Would you mind me asking what rank you were given?" Sasuke asked, with the indication that he didn't really care. The tick marks formed on Naruto's head. "Only Sasuke would find a way to piss me off," he thought as he said, "I was ranked as a chunin," Naruto said dryly. But that said, everyone at the table looked at Naruto. His siblings looked dumbfounded except for Raaza, who had a grin. Sasuke immediately began laughing at his response and said, Did you piss off to prevent yourself from increasing your rank? I saw you when you raided the village." You had was as far as Sasuke got before his brother lightly tapped his forehead with 2 fingers. "Sasuke, you're being rude," Itachi said with the same uninterested expression that all Uchiha had. Naruto looked at Sasuke, who for a second at most could have sworn Sasuke activated his Sharingan. Sasuke dropped his eye contact and then continued in his usual uninterested etiquette. Raaza blurted out, "Ani-san, do you have problems with being a ninja too?" No. But when I was your age I had a lot of trouble," he replied. "Really, I have problems with chakra control, but no one can help me, can you?" Raaza asked with a tone of desperation in it. Naruto's perked up a bit at that and said, "I know exactly how to fix that problem." Everyone at the table turned towards Naruto at that statement. "Can you really help?" Raaza, Minato and Kushina asked at the same time. "Yay, she had the exact problem that I had when I was younger. I know exactly how to fix it," he said with the utmost confidence. Before anyone could express any happiness at the new news, they were abruptly interrupted by Sasuke saying, "Let's have a duel, Naruto." "Sasuke," Mikoto snapped. Naruto rested both hands behind his head and leaned back. "Sure. Anytime, anyplace," he said smugly. Sasuke smirked and said, "Why not tomorrow?" "But you're too scared to have it tonight," Naruto said with an ever-growing ego. "Nothing of the sorts. I just wouldn't like to spoil a good meal I ate," Sasuke countered coolly. Naruto screwed his face a little at how little Sasuke seemed to care about their fight when he was the one to propose it. When he was about to retort to Sasuke's claim, he felt an ominous presence looming near him. He turned to look in the direction to see his mother's hair flailing wildly with an evil grin on her face before saying, "Naruto dear, please don't be so brash at a dinner of family and friends. You understand what I'm saying, right?" Kushina asked. Naruto didn't really understand what he did wrong but began to nod and say yes, of course. "I'm sorry," as he replied. The rest of the dinner went off without a hitch. Many were curious about the village Naruto grew up in, and Naruto, being unsure how to reply, was mumbling until Minato spoke up by saying, "I'm sorry, but Naruto isn't supposed to talk about that." The evening winded down and eventually their waitress came with a bill. To his surprise, everyone but Kushina and Mikoto got up the second it came and started heading for the door. Unsure of what to do, he just sat there until it felt like a weight began to press into him. The air in the room got thick and he felt an unearthly pressure radiating from both Kushina and Mikoto. "Mikoto, you paid last time, it is my turn to treat you," Kushina said. No, I should be able to treat the beloved family of the Hokage," she countered. The two began to argue more intently, giving off the feeling that they wanted to kill each other more than to pay for the meal. Naruto was still sitting there paralyzed, not sure what to do, before he felt a tug on his shirt to see Riku. "Let's go, Naruto, they will be arguing for hours over this," Riku said. Riku led him outside where the rest of his family and the Uchihas were waiting. "Tomorrow at noon we'll fight at the 3rd training ground," Sasuke said before turning and following his 2 siblings who Naruto guessed were walking home. When he turned to face his family, he saw more than 100 villages, the large majority being shinobi, blocking the path to their home. Minato had a nervous laugh before backing up and muttering under his breath, "Grab a hold of me." Naruto and his sibling did and were instantly teleported to the living room of their home. "Looks like the duel with Sasuke was a good idea actually, Naruto. The entire village is curious about you, so it looks like a display of your abilities is enviable," Minato said with a sigh. "I'll head back to disperse the crowd and put out an announcement about the duel tomorrow. Hopefully this will sate the curiosity of the villagers," Minato stated with a level look at Naruto. Just as quickly and suddenly as Minato arrived to the living room of the house, he vanished just the same. There Naruto stood with his three siblings all with the same look on their face. Naruto was more than curious at what his siblings were all thinking, before Lecky said Aka-san and Otu-san won't be getting home until like tonight, half asking half stating. Yep, seems like it. Riku agreed with a huge grin on his face. Then let's get started. While you and Naruto bathe we'll get everything set up, Lecky offered. Sure, once we finish too I'll get the snacks ready, Riku offered. Unsure what his siblings were talking about he spoke up and said, what are you guys talking about? Movie night. All three trilled in unison. But that Riku led Naruto to the bathroom where the two began to bathe. There Naruto got more than his fill of answers from Riku about how children would have curfews and that they rarely got to stay up late. The concept was foreign to Naruto of why they would want to stay up late. He always tried to go to bed early because when he stayed up late Naruto would be exhausted the entire next day. Also the concept of someone telling him when to go to bed felt so foreign. Naruto always made decisions for himself and the idea of someone making them for him didn't sit well. He was still trying to wrap his mind around the concepts of being a part of a family with decisions not being based solely around himself. Once they finished bathing they left the bathroom and headed to their rooms to put pajamas on with Riku shouting down the hall that they were done. In his room Naruto found a pair of pajamas from his shopping excursion. He inspected them before putting them on. It was a plain blue tee with the pants having cloud patterns on them. Eventually he finished and walked into the living room to see it refurbished like a fort structured around the television. Once he arrived Riku gave Naruto a grin and said while Lecky and Raaza sure outdid themselves this time while he marveled the fort. Riku then headed into the kitchen and put a bag of popcorn into the microwave. He then got chips, dips and various other snacks and setting them around the television fort. Once Riku finished he sat down in the fort and began to flicker through channels until he found one playing horror movies all night. This look good, Naruto? Riku asked while gesturing to the television, snacks and fort. Naruto didn't really think much about it. He never tried anything like this before. It felt childish to build a fort and watch movies until late at night. Even though everything seemed like an overcomplicated process to watch a movie to Naruto there was an alluring feeling to it. He sat down next to Riku being in the middle of the fort and watched the credits of the horror film that just ended. He heard his sisters exit the bath and head to their rooms. After a few minutes they come out in pajamas and they too entered the fort. There wasn't enough room for all four of them and Naruto thought must have forgot to make extra room for me. Surprisingly though Raaza just climbed onto Naruto and laid on his back with her head resting on his. Lecky and Riku got close to Naruto and the close proximity gave him a comfort he never felt before. Just being so close to the family he never had brought pure euphoria to Naruto's mind and body. Just in time you two, the movie is about to start, Riku said as he started to shovel handfuls of popcorn into his mouth. A horror film, Riku? You know Raaza gets scared from them, she said in a chillingly manner. I'm not scared. Raaza proclaimed. Fine, but if you get scared you are not sleeping in my room, then, alright. Lecky questioned. Fine. Raaza snapped. Naruto chuckled a little at his siblings' antics. The movie began and first real memory of family was forever ingrained into his mind. The movie had a few jump scares where the siblings would bicker amongst themselves of who was scared the most. During scary parts, Raaza would cover her ears and bury her head into Naruto's back. After an hour or so the movie came to a conclusion. The group of children yawned and Lecky said, we'll clean up tomorrow, let's head to bed. Aka-san and Otu-san should be getting back anytime now. Once Naruto got to his room he lied down. A small rain pour began and the drops hitting his window helped to get him to fall asleep to the continuous sound of nature lulling him to bed. In the middle of the night a loud strike of thunder plus the frantic opening and slamming of a door woke him up. He heard a pair of feet sprint down the hall and his door was swung open. A figure slipped in and closed the door behind them. Being more than tense Naruto's muscles began to coil in anticipation when the figure spoke up. Can I sleep with you, Ani-san? Came the pleading voice of his youngest sister. Why would you want to sleep in here? You have your own bed, Naruto said. Please, I'm SCSCC scared. The lighting plushie stuttered with her voice shaking. There was nothing short of pleading in her tone, so Naruto let a small smile on his face and said sure, climb on in. The feeling of Raaza climbing into his bed, laying on his arm and hugging his body was extensively nerve-wracking. Never before has had allowed or dreamed of someone to be in such a close proximity to him while he slept. The trust and love Raaza already gave Naruto seemed to scare him slightly. The thought of allowing himself to completely trust another scared him a little. Sure, he trusted people in his old life, but they were to an extent. Both his senseis would be incompetent at times, so he would never end up investing too much in them. Kakashi would never arrive on time and on occasion never show up at all. His pervert of a teacher could end up dropping everything in order to find inspiration for his books. He trusted his friends with nearly anything, but since his fallout with Sasuke, he stopped creating strong emotional ties to others. The bonds Naruto had with others were strong and would life a lifetime, but he never allowed too much emotional dependency on others. With Raaza laying next to him, he began to truly understand kinship. A family was so much more than people bound by blood. They were those that you could always trust. Those that would do anything for you. Those that cared for you. Those that wanted nothing more for you to succeed and would stop at nothing to help you do so. This is what a family was meant to do. This was what was denied and stolen from him his entire life. A happiness never experienced by the blonde shinobi started in the pit of his stomach. The feeling spread throughout his entire body, and for the first time in a long time, he was completely content. The pure bliss he was feeling was only slightly interrupted by a crackle of thunder, followed by the flash of lightning. The storm caused Raaza to shudder against his body, and the desire to make her fears go away outweighed all other thoughts that were running through his head. He slowly began to release his wind chakra to create a small barrier around himself. The act hollowed all noises, but allowed the sound of a reminiscent breeze to fill their ears. Looking down at Raaza, he saw her eyes go wide from the soothing chakra that was sheltering her from the outside world. "Thanks Ani-san," was all Raaza said before her eyes drifted shut and her mind was carried off to the sanitary of her dreams. Naruto continued to funnel his natural chakra out of his system for as long as he was conscious. Even after sleep claimed him, Naruto was unconsciously keeping his chakra cloak around the two, guaranteeing his youngest sibling a peaceful sleep devoid of her fears. What if Naruto Rinnegan missing Nin? Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.